Good morning. I would like to call the meeting of the August 8th meeting of the Kentucky State Board of Education to order. We will begin with swearing in. Leah Sharp's here from our General Counsel's office. Dr. Paul Long and Justin Pate, please, we're ready to swear you in. Leah, please.
I'm going to start by reading the oath in its entirety, and then I'll call on you individually to swear. So, Justin Long and Paul Long and Justin Pate, please raise your right hands. I do solemnly swear, or affirm as the case may be, that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth, and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth of Kentucky so long as I continue a citizen thereof, and that I will faithfully execute to the best of my ability the office of Kentucky Board of Education member according to law. And I do further solemnly swear that since the adoption of the present Constitution, I, being a citizen of this state, have not fought a duel with deadly weapons within this state, nor out of it, nor have I sent or accepted a challenge to fight a duel with deadly weapons, nor have I acted as second in carrying a challenge, nor aided or assisted any person thus offending, so help me God. Paul Long. Justin Pate.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah. Now that we are all properly sworn in, Meredith, please call the roll.
Holly Bloodworth.
Here.
Mike Borchers.
Here.
Paul Long. Here. Justin Pate. Here. Julie Pyle. Randy Poe. Sharon Robinson.
Here.
Lee Todd. Here. Steve Trimble. Here. Diane Woods. Here. Lou Young.
Here.
Lawrence McCroby.
Here.
Preston Graham.
Here.
Secretary Link. Here. President Thompson. Okay, Chair, you do have a quorum.
Thank you so much. In today's agenda, we include the section dedicated to public comment. This segment is limited to 10 speakers at a maximum of 3 minutes each. If there are multiple members of an organization, we encourage the membership of that group to select one person to offer their comment. Are there any speakers signed up at this point? None. Moving on to our next item of important business is the good news. Each meeting includes a time when we reflect on some of what there is to celebrate with our students and our educators across the state. So these assignments are just embraced by members of the board. So I will call on Lou to offer the first good news.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure this morning to recognize KBE's Kathy Gallagher as the recipient of the 2024 Summer Hunger Heroes Award. Kathy was celebrated at Frankfort High School on July 18th as one of the 2024 Summer Hunger Heroes. Gallagher is the manager of the Summer Food Service Program at the department, and she provides support and resources for the staff behind the scenes who make the summer meals happen for Kentucky students. What you may not know is that for several years now, we've been feeding students all summer long at sites in our school districts on a daily basis throughout the summer. Any students, any children or youth who show up to be fed during the summer. Kathy was nominated by Feeding Kentucky, who described her as an unwavering supporter of Kentucky kids and their families, and the ultimate cheerleader for the people behind the scenes who make summer meals happen for kids. At that July 18th event, the Kentucky Department of Education, No Kid Hungry, and Feeding Kentucky recognized the work of the Summer Hunger Heroes and the Summer Food Service Program. SFSP, the Summer Food Service Program administered through the department, has served more than 3.9 million meals in May and June of 2024, a 51.65% increase in meals served compared to the same 2 months in 2023. KDE works closely with these programs as they are an advocacy organization to combat food insecurity. Congratulations to Kathy Gallagher on being one of Kentucky's Summer Hunger Heroes.
Next, we'll call on Ms. Bloodworth to introduce the Russell Independent students who received national recognition.
Yes. So we have 9 seniors in Aaron Woolham's welding class at the Russell Area Technology Center, and they completed a metal art sculpture that now has a permanent home in Washington, D.C. The sculpture, which allowed the students to use the skills learned in the welding class, was a way to keep the graduating seniors involved and engaged at the end of their last year while allowing them a space for their creativity to shine. Their sculpture won first place at district, regional, and the national DAR competitions. This year's competition theme was Sparkling in the Stars, celebrating 50 years of the Space Shuttle program.
Wow.
Their sculpture includes items representing shooting stars, the moon, and the American flag. Each element was built with various metals, such as stainless steel and old pieces of metal pipe. Congratulations to these now graduates for this outstanding accomplishment.
Oh, wonderful.
And they're working on getting the slides up for today, but board members, you can find the slide deck for Good News in your portal and see a picture of the sculpture.
And the public will be able to see it shortly. So, next, we'll call on Steve Trimble to tell us about the 2024 Braille Challenge Finals.
It is my pleasure to announce a Kentucky student who competed in the 2024 Braille Challenge Finals. Krishana Malhotra was among the top 50 students selected to participate in the 2024 Braille Challenge Finals. The event, hosted by the Braille Institute in Los Angeles, California, on June 21st through the 23rd, included competitors from across the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Krishana, a 13-year-old going into the 7th grade at the Kentucky School for the Blind, participated in the sophomore division. Students were graded on charts and graphs, proofreadings, reading comprehension, speed and accuracy, and spelling. Krishana previously qualified for the Braille Challenge Final in 2020, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, everything was virtual and he competed from home. Congratulations to Krishana for being selected to participate in the Braille Challenge Finals.
Our kids are persistent in their learning and excelling. Dr. Todd, tell us about the Kentucky teachers selected for the 2024 STEM Scholars Program.
I'm pleased to bring to your attention Courtney Taylor. She was an educator from Stanford. She was one of 9 middle school science teachers chosen from 8 states by the National Stem Cell Foundation and the Gatton Academy of Math and Science. This program is in its 9th year, and it's an advanced professional development program which will allow Courtney to interact with a network of similar teachers around the country. The Scholar program selects educators who each year come from a national pool of people who have suggested big ideas. These ideas are projects that the applicant will put to active use in their classroom if they are selected. Selected educators like Taylor presented ideas that showed maximum educational impact within middle school classrooms, where research shows that lifelong STEM career decisions are made. Taylor, who was a Lincoln County middle school science teacher when she was selected, will be teaching as freshman teacher at Casey County High School for the 24-25 school year. Because of that move, she had to change her original big idea from robotics to one where she's now going to use her freshman class to mentor the 4th through 8th grade students in the importance of STEM, to do experiments with them, and to try to bring up their awareness of where STEM can lead their careers. So congratulations to Courtney Taylor from Stanford.
you the good news. Diane?
Good morning, everyone. This is indeed good news. Arlington Elementary School in Fayette County and Robert D. Johnson Elementary School in Fort Thomas earned the U.S. Department of Education's 2024 Green Ribbon Schools Award for their creative efforts to lower utility costs, thank you, and to make an environmental impact, enhance health and well-being, and provide quality sustainability education. Arlington Elementary and Robert D. Johnson Elementary are among 41 schools, 10 districts, 3 post-secondary institutions, and 1 early learning center honored this year across the country. At Robert D. Johnson Elementary, the students formed the ideal to become a green school during the demolition of their nearly 100-year-old school building. They were worried about the impact of construction that the construction would have on the environment and the animals living nearby. The school created a student-led composting program to increase environmental awareness for positive change in the school and community, which has led to project-based learning opportunities focused on environmental education at every grade level. Students also started a campaign that includes promoting more classroom recycling and installing recycling bins in every classroom and in the cafeteria for plastic forks. The school reduced waste from 4 55-gallon garbage cans of trash that went to the landfill daily to just 1.
Whoa.
Whoa. Arlington Elementary participated in a school-wide after-school program, which creates an opportunity for students to explore seeds, animal habitats, and the butterfly life cycle through hands-on work in a school garden. The project also has been an efficient way for the students to learn about composting and its benefits. Cafeteria waste that would normally have gone into the dumpster now feeds the garden, thereby helping lower the school budget for reducing school sanitation costs. The students harvest produce, save seeds, compost, and create products to sell in a wellness pop-up shop, with all proceeds going back to the school program. Congratulations to these 2 schools, Arlington Elementary School in Fayette County and Robert D. Johnson Elementary School, for being selected as green schools. I think we need to give them a big clap and handshake.
Well, good news, further recognition from the U.S. Department of Education, this time from the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services. Each year they issued its 2024 determination letter on state implementation of the Individuals with Disabilities Act, IDEA. I'm excited to announce that for the 15th consecutive year, Kentucky has received the highest rating for meeting the requirements and purposes of Part B of IDEA. This accomplishment reflects the ongoing dedication of Kentucky's special education staff and families to provide exceptional services and support to school-age students between 3 and 21, those students with disabilities. The Kentucky Department of Education's Office of Special Education and Early Learning administers the Part B program in Kentucky. In 2024, 21 states or territories, including Kentucky, were determined to meet requirements. Kentucky is only one of 2 states that have maintained this level of excellence for so many consecutive years, underscoring the state's commitment to the ideals of IDEA, which are equality of opportunity, full participation, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency for children with disabilities. Kentucky's consistent high performance in meeting the requirements of IDEA Part B highlights the state's strong educational infrastructure and the dedication of its educators, families, and the community partners to improve educational experiences for students with disabilities. Please join me in congratulating Associate Commissioner Greta Hilton and the whole team in the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. So colleagues, especially those of you who are new on the board, we take this time because this good news is the source of inspiration. We deal a lot with the problems and the muck and the mire, if you will. These are the gems. So that's the reason this time is so very, very important on this agenda. The next item on the agenda is also important. It's board sharing. This is the time we take to, as board members, say what we've been up to, what ideas are coming to mind, and especially issues that you want to bring to the attention of fellow board members. And today we have an especially important component to board sharing, which is the introduction, the self-introduction of our new members to the rest of the board. So if you wouldn't mind, I would like to begin with our student member. Please, tell us about yourself, Preston.
I'll be happy to start. Well, good morning, everybody. Pleasure to meet you all. Before I begin to introduce myself, I would just like to reaffirm that it is an absolute pleasure to meet you all, and thank you all for being so welcoming and accommodating as I begin to transition into this role. So, what is a 16-year-old doing on the Board of Education? That's probably a good question a lot of y'all are asking. My name is Preston Graham, not Patrick, as the commissioner may have called me once or twice. But I'm a junior at Woodford County, and I'm here to serve as the student representative, kind of helping out, adding a student perspective to all of the important board meeting stuff we got going on. Back home, two big hobbies of mine. One is swimming, which I've been doing for the past 7-8 years. That's kind of been my athletic choice. Community service, another big part for me. I love giving back to the community just because of Woodford County. Very thankful for all they've done for me. So it's always a pleasure and an honor to give back to the community. Overall, very excited to serve on this board, contribute the best work I can to create the best future possible. Thank you.
County today.
The first day of school, actually, funnily enough. So
I think this might be an excused absence.
yeah, just hopefully we'll see what I can do about that.
For those of you who may be watching, we did a kind of an interest personality type inventory, and of all the people that were here, Preston's was the most well-rounded of the group. So, so again, we really appreciate that.
Welcome. And the next person we want to welcome is Dr. McCorby, who's on duty in school today, the first day back in class. Please, Dr. McCorby, let us know more about you.
Yes, my name is Lawrence McCroby. As our chair just announced, it is our first day of school here in Jefferson County Public Schools. So I'm here at Valley High School, where I serve as the band and orchestra director. And I also chair all of our performing arts programs here at the school. I'm from Elizabethtown. I have resided there my entire life. I'm a Hardin County Schools graduate, proud graduate, and I'm proud that all of my education, minus 2 of my degrees, have been here in the state of Kentucky, a testament to the education here in Kentucky. I have 3 brothers and 2 sisters, all of which are educators. Both of my parents are educators. My grandparents were also educators as well. My free time, I love spending working with people. I work in local homeless shelters and food shelters here in Louisville, as well as in Elizabethtown. And I'm a proud member of the Knights of Columbus. My mission is always to educate and give people the tools in which they can be successful in future endeavors. So I'm very happy to be on this board. I'm very happy to hear what our colleagues have to advance the mission, and I'm just hopeful that my insights and my wisdom might be useful in those decisions and the guiding processes.
Thank you so much. This is a board that has really leaned into the voice, vision, and the guidance of our student and teacher members, so welcome. We'll next call on Mike Borges, please.
Well, thank you. I'm very honored to be a part of this. My name's Mike Borchers. I'm from Northern Kentucky. I'm a retired superintendent. That's hard to say. I've been in education for 29 years, the last 13 leading Ludlow. I worked in Ludlow my entire career, worked closely with the Chamber of Commerce, worked with KASS, and done a lot of work with the legislators over the years. Worked a lot with a lot of our KDE staff. Some of them are probably happy to see me here, and some of them are shaking their heads. But I will say to the board, I was talking to Chair Robinson earlier, working with Dr. Fletcher is going to be an honor. I've worked with him as a colleague while we were both superintendents to do a lot of work through some difficult times in the state. And my goal would be to help KDE and to help this board, and then also to be a connection to the districts in the state, and just have an open eye and talk about things that I know is affecting the school districts and help them be more successful.
Dr. Long.
I'm kind of a computer illiterate, so you'll have to bear with me on some of this. I'm Paul Long. I'm just an old country lawyer from Lincoln County, Kentucky. Practiced law since 1980. I do come from a family of educators. My mother and dad and several aunts and uncles have been educators and principals and such as that, and a lot of my first cousins are. I'm looking forward to learning on this board, because I think probably my best attribute would be that I don't know anything about this and I'm trying to learn. But my sole involvement in education, other than my son, was I was the academic advisor to the UK football team. And I worked for Bob Bradley, who probably Dr. Todd knows. And my sole job was to make sure I had 40 football players going to class every day, and that they'd be ready to play on Saturday. And that was my job, and I did it. And this is the first day of school, and my oldest grandson, it's his first day as a first grader at Mercer Elementary School.
Thank you for being here, and clearly your perspective on education will be most welcome. Justin Pate, please.
My name is Justin Pate, and I work at Elizabethtown Community and Technical College. But I started my career in K-12. I was an English teacher and a football coach, and we were talking yesterday, I think I was the only English teaching football coach in the state of Kentucky. But yeah, I've had a real varied background with education, and from my English degree in teaching, I was pretty quickly in administration, and then was selected to be the principal of an area technology center. Personally, you know, I put myself through school doing construction and auto mechanics and those kind of things, so you know that background kind of lent itself to, you know, the technical world. But then from there, having an English degree and a technical principalship, the local community college kind of said, hey, you know, that's what we do. We're comprehensive. We do all these things. Would you be interested in coming working with us? And so it's kind of been a natural progression, even though it seems like it's a lot of sideways steps. But you know, having the chance to come here, and now having served as a president in the college for just about 8 years, you know, you really see where the alignments and maybe even some of the misalignments with what we do and what KDE does, and having the KDE background, and you know, that helped me really try to take some steps at the college to better align with what, you know, KDE was doing, and particularly our local schools. So I think all of these things are really good. So I'm really looking forward to being here. I think this involvement, I hope to be able to contribute to what we do, but I think this involvement is certainly going to impact what I do, and then through my circles, what KCTCS does. So, you know, it's really good alignment between two of the most critical state organizations we have for the education of the citizens of the Commonwealth. And most of our graduates stay in Kentucky. So, you know, the pipeline of K-12 into KCTCS, Elizabethtown Community and Technical College, Lawrence, by the way, it's good to meet a new Etonian. that's so important to what we do for the 20-year future of not just our workforce that gets the attention, but it's truly the citizenry that we create as a vision for where we are going to be as a Commonwealth. So I'm really excited to be here, Madam Chairman, and really look forward to working with all of you all and Dr. Fletcher.
All of you, let's welcome again our new members. And I see so many connections. It's like if I were trying to do a sociogram of all of this is, it would drive you crazy, but it's so inspiring to become aware of the treasures that we have, dedicating time and interest and their very best efforts to the learners of our state. Thank you so much for your service. And now I'll ask, are there other board members who have sharing? I'm going to start then.
Okay, you start, I'll go next.
Okay. Yesterday, I was not quite on full stage on my soapbox regarding the education workforce. But today I want to get there and maybe just not get down until we commit to finding a way to sort through and understand what the issues are, understand what our responsibility and opportunity to contribute to solutions might be, and get busy. So, Dr. Fletcher, we are asking a lot already, but I suggest to you that I can persuade this board to have this issue as one of our most important strategic priorities. Forewarned, and we are guarding the door, so, but I think we're ready for the next big challenge, just as we are ready to grow in our support of Kentucky United We Learn. That's my good news. Lou?
Excellent, thank you. And I just had a couple of opportunities this summer to represent the board at different events. Dr. Fletcher, Dr. Brewer, and I were able to join Education Commission of the States that work in DC. I'm a commissioner for Kentucky, and I always really, really appreciate their policy perspective, a 50-state perspective. It was a really good conference. Our own Reagan Satterwhite, who's here today, was a presenter. She represented Kentucky very well, as always, and got a lot of national attention for the CTE work and workforce development work that's happening in Kentucky. And I learned a lot from the sessions, the panels, the networking that happened there. So it was a really good experience this summer. And then several of us were able to join. Holly, Sharon, and I were able to be at the July 29th. Mike, you may have been there too. Randy too, maybe? At the July 29th. And Diane. At the Kentucky United We Learn convening on that day, and just a nice preview of what we heard yesterday from Rhonda and Jennifer. So excellent work, and just really proud of the department for continuing to strive for that moonshot goal that we set a couple years back.
We're on our way. On our way. Well, we will return to the agenda then. The next item of business is a report from the President of the Council on Post-Secondary Education, and because Dr. Thompson can't be with us, we will look to hear from him at a later time. But we do have with us the Secretary of Education and Labor, Jamie Link. Mr. Secretary, we welcome your report.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, new members of the board, some that I already have a working relationship with, giving that alignment between our education system and our workforce system. So it's a real pleasure to be here. It's been an interesting past few weeks as our governor's been in the national news quite a bit. It's been a little bittersweet. I really was hopeful, but also thankful that he's still here with us. So, and he will not take his foot off the pedal, and we're driving forward, and workforce is going to be one of his primary goals. Over his term, We've seen $32 billion in new investment and almost 55,000 new jobs created. So the work of this board and the work of this department are going to be critical for filling the needs that we have. I really anticipate in this upcoming General Assembly that workforce is going to be a key subject that the General Assembly will want to address, and we want them to address. We appeared before a committee last week to give them a brief update, and I was really pleased that the committee, to a member, basically said, what can we do to help the cabinet, which was a bit unusual. We usually go in there with Kevlar and ready to take some slings and arrows, but it was a really positive meeting, which gives me hope for the upcoming session. The governor has made a couple of international economic development trips to Central Europe and then to Asia. And the number one topic that all of the CEOs and the presidents of these companies talked about is what is the workforce in Kentucky. So that, to them, is going to be a critical requirement, as we know. And as we said before, what we do today and over the next few months and few years, these CEOs are watching. And if we hope to bring more development to Kentucky, we have to prove that we can develop the workforce and the workforce pipeline to satisfy these companies' workforce needs. So again, I think the partnership between the Department of Education, our Council on Post-Secondary Education, our department and other state agencies and local partners are going to be critical for addressing this need. Speaking of that collaboration, we have, and I've probably mentioned this some before, and not to repeat myself, but one of the things we stressed in our presentation of the General Assembly is collaboration, because everyone has workforce initiatives. Dr. Hargis and CTE, CPE, KCTCS, the Kentucky Chamber, and we all have resources dedicated to it, but they're not enough individually. So we're going to have to work in concert with one another to bring together a unified approach to workforce development. And the number one thing we need to know is, what do the employers need? And those needs will change as technology advances, as their production methods might change, as their business methods might change. So we have to have that nimble pipeline that is constantly addressing the evolving needs of business. So that collaboration is going to be critical between all of us working together in the same direction. And I would include in that the General Assembly. If they're going to be serious about workforce development and bringing more economic development to Kentucky, they're going to have to play a key role both in policy issues as well as funding issues to help advance our workforce development efforts. One example of that is in the last session, regrettably, our Everybody Counts initiative that I've spoken to the board about before was not refunded. We have developed some braided funding to keep that program going at its core purpose, but it does not allow us to expand. But we have completed the playbook that we developed for Everybody Counts. It's final draft that's going through final review. And then I'll be approaching the board and the department to share this for any local districts, superintendents, principals, local businesses that want to take a look at this and see how it works, the successes we've had in the 5 counties we're in. And this isn't about ownership or credit. This is just about providing a roadmap that might be helpful to existing processes that are taking place, and to also engage the employer community in assisting with the development of these young people toward their career goals. The General Assembly did fund $20 million to the local workforce boards across the state. and that money is dedicated to youth and young adult programs. So this is where we can start to make an impact in helping young people realize their career goals. Also with the cabinet, again, I'm kind of a broken record because we do this every day. It's just a churn that we try to do. But we have much more emphasis now on reentry and recovery employment, helping those people who have had substance use disorder issues as well as criminal justice issues to move into the workplace. And we're working with multiple collaborative partners to help people that even before they leave an institution, start to receive the training they need, that in working with the employer community, when they leave that facility, the first day they've got a job to go to, or they have a training program to go to. And obviously our hope is that getting on the right path and then providing the support services post-release, because sometimes it's a challenge. And we can't just abandon them once they leave the institution. We have to stay with them and help them for 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it takes to keep them supported and moving forward. Our veteran employment efforts are increasing across not only the state but the country. We want to recruit transitioning service members to come to Kentucky or stay in Kentucky and fill the jobs that we have here to take advantage of the quality of life we have in Kentucky, and to also take advantage of the educational system we have in Kentucky, especially for those young soldiers who are leaving military service. Obviously, again, I mentioned at the General Assembly the barriers to workforce that we are trying to address, including childcare, transportation issues, affordable housing, and the benefits cliff. It's difficult for some people to look at their situation and if they're put in the position of getting a job, but by getting that job they lose other benefits, that's a hard sell. So we're going to work on seeing how we can find some method of easing that drop and making it more attractive for people to get back into the workforce. In some other areas of the cabinet, just to report, after 30-plus long-suffering years, we have entered into a contract to replace our unemployment insurance system, which was all the rage a few years ago, but that has now started in earnest, and within the next 2 to 3 years, we hope to have that completely replaced, which is really a milestone, I think, that we've been able to accomplish. We're not there yet, but our team is working very diligently on replacing this system. And we also have a new mobile unit that's going to be arriving here in a couple of weeks that will allow us in unemployment insurance, in case there's a company closure in a community, in case there's a natural disaster or some other extraordinary event, we can take this unit and service 15 people at a time, and it has full connectivity to help them file unemployment insurance claims on site, and they don't have to know who to call, they don't have to get online if they don't have connectivity, and we can help them walk through the unemployment insurance claims process, and that will allow us to bring the service to the people rather than asking the people to come to the service. Our cabinet is growing. We just absorbed the Department for Disability Determination Services, which was under the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, but they do the Social Security disability determinations. And Kentucky is one of the premier states in processing disability claims. I don't know if that's good or bad necessarily, but for the people that need it, that's a good thing. And we have no backlog. As a matter of fact, federal Social Security has asked us to take on cases from other states because we are one of the premier processing states in the country. So we're glad to have them as a part of us. And then the last thing I'll mention, and I think the department is somewhat familiar with it, we are excited about standing up now All 120 counties in the Commonwealth are members of the Dolly Parton Imagination Library Program. I think we have 122 local partners, and we hope to see Dolly in the Commonwealth sometime soon. That's all I can say, or I will be shot. But we're looking forward to this new program. The General Assembly did support this with $2.5 million per year. We hope to sustain that funding and also increase the participation in the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. So I'll end on a good note, and happy to address any questions that any of the members or the audience might have. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the Secretary? Secretary Link, I noted our commissioner making notes during your report. I know that the close work with KDE will continue, and I'm also going to ask if it might be possible for us to perhaps learn more about Everybody Counts. So at our next meeting, we will have good news from that quarter, and I think we'd all appreciate knowing more.
And I appreciate that invitation. We have a young man named Chris Sanders, who is the director of that program. And whatever he's on, I want some of it, because he is endless energy and endless optimism. And I think that's the special kind of person it takes to run a program like that. And if it's okay with the board, I would love to have him come and give you a brief presentation on Everybody Counts, and would be happy to do that.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I love working with this commissioner. And so we're going to call on him to make his first report to the board as our commissioner. Please.
Give us a heads up when Dolly's coming, right?
Oh, yeah, that kind of. Let's have your report. Please welcome our commissioner.
Thanks so much. Thank you to everyone in the room. I want to start by thanking the Kentucky Board of Education members, first and foremost, for having the belief that I can lead this system, not as a out front as much as possibly beside each other, behind people to push them. You know, I talked about in my interview, I try my best to be a servant leader, and that means you try to hold hands with people to help them along, help them through, but also too as a transformational leader to stand behind them to push them. But also understand as a commissioner, you're going to have to stand in front, sometimes to defend, but other times to lead. So this is my first meeting as commissioner. It is my second board meeting all together though. The first one was a little more intense. No one would sit beside me in the first one. So when I walked out that day, people asked, said, well, Dr. Fletcher, Robbie, how did it go? I said, I had a good time. I hope they did. So with that being said, the thing that I appreciate most about this board so far, and there's going to be so much more, was the expectations were very clear in my interview of what was expected. Then how refreshing it is after I received the job. Yesterday, those same expectations were echoed. I understand what the expectations are for the new commissioner. And I also know that each one of you will be here to support me in those expectations. So thank you for that. The second group I'd like to thank would be the Kentucky Department of Education. I'll start with the leadership team. First and foremost, you've been beside me to help me along, to help me to understand. Of course, I come with some expertise and knowledge in different areas, but you have pushed me, you have welcomed me, and you have thanked me for just being there with you. And I want to say thank you as a commissioner for that. But also to Team KDE. We had a nice reception after a Team KDE meeting, and the beauty of that was every time I shook someone's hand, I got more and more excited about having this role because the enthusiasm was unbelievable. The caring for kids was unbelievable with our team at KDE. Of course, Stacy, Miss Ball, helped orchestrate that and her team. But the beauty of that was again, every single person was so enthusiastic, not necessarily about the commissioner, but about kids. And when you walk into those type of settings, it just revs you up each time. So thank you to KDE, every single person, not just the leadership team, who is a special group, thank you so much, but each member of Team KDE for making me feel welcome, but also for revving your commissioner up, if you will. Also, too, I'd like to take an opportunity to have a sincere appreciation for the reception that was organized in Frankfort. At first, I was a little bit opposed, but Dr. Kenny talked me into this. And what was, as being in education for almost 30 years, there's so many circles that I've been a part of. As a matter of fact, Superintendent Borchers, former recovering Superintendent Borchers, and we were on a task force for funding. And I can go around the room and talk about different things we've been a part of, but some of the individuals include superintendents, legislators, KBE members, colleagues from the Kentucky Department of Education, K-group leaders, and representatives from the governor's office, as well as so many other dedicated educators throughout the Commonwealth were there. And to me, that was such a unique opportunity because there were so many circles, and to see them intersect for a couple of hours with my family, my wife, my kids, Aunt Dee, who was there. And for those of you who got an opportunity to meet Aunt Dee, your life is much different in a much better way. My in-laws, who are both educators. My father-in-law was a principal for 27 years. A.J. Haney and his wife, Mary Lou, was a guidance counselor. Both retired as part of education. Of course, my wife, Missy, was there, and my kids, Eli, and also Abigail was there. So it was a great time to see those circles intersect, and for my family to see my new family with KBE and KDE and groups there. So thank you for that time. But also, too, I've had the opportunity already to visit so many groups. I was the keynote speaker at KSBA, so I was able to stop and talk to board members across the state. What's their interests? What's their goals? What's going on in their districts? I was also at the Kentucky Association of School Administrators. I spoke there, and I talked to so many leaders across the Commonwealth, not only administrators, but also, too, there were some teachers there talking about education. Wanted to know a little bit about the new commissioner, but really bragging about their schools and what was going on. I was also a part of the Kentucky Association of School Superintendents luncheons. I've been to 2 of those, including the new superintendents and the old guys and ladies, too, that have been around a little while. And having that opportunity to sit on this side of the table, if you will, just to understand that we're all on the same side of the table. And, you know, I may be sitting here as commissioner, but we realize that all of us are on that same table, on the same team as we go through. So as I've gone through, I've also been able to visit schools. I've been at Bourbon County Elementary. I was able to read a book with so many students and enjoyed that. Actually, there's a picture that circulates of Dr. Fletcher and Luna. I have a lot of gray hair in that picture. I don't know how that happened. But the beauty of that picture was I was able to be with kids. Also, too, I was at Shelby County. I was the last person to leave the gym after their opening day because people want to talk about the great things that are going on in Shelby County. I mentioned that yesterday, and that was a beautiful opportunity. So I'll be looking for those opportunities throughout. How do I get into classrooms? How do I get into events? You know, I mentioned yesterday, I'll be at some football games. I'll be at some academic matches. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to be moderating pretty soon at an academic match. We won't announce that because I don't want any news reporters there. But I will be doing things like that just to get to see kids. And that's what this was really about. But as I went through, including the reception, it was a great opportunity to see the common goal we all have. Every person you talk to, at the bottom line, what they want to do is to give every single child the opportunity to be successful. And a lot of times when I talk about 3 opportunities for kids. The opportunity to dream. I think that's our goal in education, is to teach kids how to dream. Sometimes they need that. The opportunity to succeed, which means, opportunity to struggle. We have to challenge kids each and every day so they can be successful once they walk out of our classrooms. Then, of course, at the end, the opportunity to succeed. What type of opportunities are we giving, Preston? Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And we want to do the same type of opportunities he's having in Woodford County. We want those students to have those same type of opportunities in Lawrence County, but also, too, Woodford County to learn from Lawrence County and vice versa, to collaborate and work together. So as I've been across the Commonwealth, this is an opportunity for us to unite and work together, and again, to provide those opportunities. Now, also, too, as commissioner, I also serve some other roles that I'm learning more and more about as the superintendent at the Kentucky School for the Deaf and the Kentucky School for the Blind, and also the ATCs, and then also get an opportunity to share my good news now. So if I may, good news from the commissioner, and again, this is something that David Couch, listen closely, please, sir, not that you have to listen because you've lived this. I'm thrilled to announce another historic achievement for Kentucky K-12 successfully completed this past week. Since 1992, Kentucky K-12 has been a national leader in education technology, always striving for improvement. In 1995, we became the first state to connect every K-12 district to the internet. The first, mind you. And in 2015, we were the first to provide fiber internet to every school. Over the past 9 months, we've transitioned all KD internet hubs to NA internet service, increasing bandwidth per student tenfold compared to 2015. This new service also enhances cybersecurity and ensures robust, scalable internet for the next decade. This transition was a massive, complex effort executed flawlessly. Thank you to our school districts, EdTech vendors, state partners, and KDE staff for making this milestone possible for our Kentucky K-12 community. So, thank you so much. Other pieces of good news, our state schools continue to excel. The Kentucky School for the Deaf hosted its annual agricultural Ag Camp Kentucky for Deaf and Hard of Hearing students in grades 9 through 12 in June. Campers went on a trip to Lake Barkley State Resort Park and visited various places such as Keeneland, Evans Orchard, Berea College Farm, and a railroad company. So congratulations to our students there, and we're really proud of the work that they do at the Kentucky School for the Deaf. Also, in association with the Kentucky School for the Blind, 23 blind and visually impaired students completed the summer work program at Kentucky Kingdom. Wow. Opportunity, right? Opportunity. The Louisville Zoo and the American Printing House for the Blind. 2 students were offered full-time summer jobs at the zoo after the completion of the work program. Success. Awesome. Our area technology centers have been very busy this summer. Lake Cumberland Regional College and Workforce Center held a career exploration summer program for 6th graders. Students had the opportunity to take an in-depth, hands-on approach to learning about 3D printing, robotics, and welding. The Southern Kentucky Early Career College Academy held a job fair where students spoke with employers, filled out applications, submitted resumes, and some were even hired. All great news, and as superintendent, I'm very proud to report those to you. Now, as Commissioner, Chair Robinson, this concludes my summary remarks. A full report can be found in the board's portal, and I'd be happy to take on any questions that anyone would like to ask at this time.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Are there questions, follow-up comments? For the new members in particular, we encourage the further use and distribution of these materials in the portal. You can use them as you're making reports in your community or within your constituent groups, because we need to help people understand that we're in it. We are deep in it in every respect. And they do deserve to know some of the gems, as we need them to be vocal about some of about what our challenges are. So, but this is inspiring and emboldens us. So let's get busy on the rest of our agenda. Thank you, Commissioner.
I would also note for board members that President Thompson's CPE report is also in the portal.
Thank you. I forgot to mention it. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to welcome to the table Dr. Terry Brooks. Dr. Brooks represents the youth counts and is going to report on the 2024 Kids Count National Data Book.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Commissioner, members of the board, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I come to you with really three different lenses. I spent more than 30 years as a public school administrator, so I know KBE from that perspective. In my current role at KYA, where I've been for 20 years, yes, those two numbers mean I'm old, we look at KBE in a different way. And perhaps most importantly, of my 9 grandchildren, so I relate to what you're saying, 5 of them had their first day of school today, so grade K through 8. So whether it's as a retired school administrator or in my current role at KYA or as a grandpa, I appreciate what you all do. I also especially appreciate Sharon inviting me to talk to you about the 2024 Kids Count report. Now, I did tease her that asking me to compress the data in that report in a reasonable time is somewhat like a field trip through the Sistine Chapel on a motorcycle. But we have sent you more material than you can shake a stick at in your portal. So my intent is to A, observe the time limit, and really to make sure about 2 things. One is that we're all on the same page as to what Kids Count is. So when you look at the material in your portal, you'll have a better context. And then secondly, to offer respectfully maybe the key takeaway that I hope you as a board begin to think about. Some 40 years ago, UPS was beginning to flex its corporate muscles by becoming engaged in the communities that it served. And at the time, it began to ask questions about the state of America's kids. What they heard were stories, ideas, vignettes, philosophies. But if you know anything about UPS, you know they are not interested in data, they're obsessed by data. They really want to know how long it takes that package car driver to get from his or her vehicle to your front porch, back to the vehicle, and on the road. So UPS has 3 major philanthropic arms. They challenged one of those, the Anna E. Casey Foundation in Baltimore, to construct the equivalent of a national report card on kids. So that's the national mothership. And then each state has a Kids Count group. In Kentucky, it's Kentucky Youth Advocates, who are really the data research partners for the national effort. And 2 things happen on an annual basis in Kentucky. In June, the national report is released. That national report measures how kids are faring in 4 domains: economic well-being, education, health, and family and community. In each of those 4 domains, there are a rubric of 4 metrics. And the important thing about that is the national effort looks at metrics that are consistent in all 50 states. So how do we measure this issue, that issue, another issue, in a way that is cogent, whether it's in California or Colorado or Connecticut or Kentucky? And then that report is released. When I look at the national report, I look at it through 2 lenses. One is, how does Kentucky do compared to other states? And I have to confess, I pay a lot more attention to Indiana and Ohio and Tennessee than I do Oregon, Wisconsin, and Massachusetts. The other part that the National Kids Count book gives us is comparing Kentucky's progress over time. So Kentucky compared to Kentucky. Of those 16 indicators, where are we getting better? Where are we showing decline? Where are we staying in a status role? So that's the national book. The other thing that happens actually uniquely in Kentucky is in November, KYA will release the state data book. And what we do is we take every metric in that national book, as well as many, many more, and we disaggregate that by county. If it's a county that has more than one school district, we disaggregate by school district. Because we know that if I'm living in any county in Kentucky, those national data points are important, and the state data points are important, but we really want to know how are kids doing in our county. There's amazing things that happen in that county data book. It was not that long ago that a superintendent, I think her name was Lou Young, was interested in raising that issue in Jessamine County. And I think, Dr. Young, if I remember right, you did not turn to the gifted and talented class in Jessamine County, but you went to the alternative program. The Providence School actually works with young people who are in state care. They've either been involved in the juvenile justice system or the child welfare system, and superintendent challenged them to become data experts. And those young people dug into those numbers, came up with Jessamine County solutions, and had the biggest press conference you can imagine for all the movers and shakers in Jessamine County. And that's what we want to see, is actionable movement in counties based on that data. So this year's Kids Count book nationally was unique because the first time in 34 years, the focus was on K-12 education. And when you dig into that, there are several things that come to my mind. First of all, it was a reminder that the first Kids Count report was released in 1990. 1990. Well, that was the year that media critics were unanimous in saying that new show Seinfeld would not make it through the first season. We really felt that the Cold War was over because the largest McDonald's in the world opened in Moscow. But in 1990, because I'm old enough to remember this and I was in a school district at that time, in 1990, the leading state in the nation when it came to education reform was Kentucky. I mean, that was a time when the judiciary, the executive branch, the General Assembly, Democrats and Republicans, urban and rural leaders, the business community, the faith community, the education community, all came together around the Kentucky Education Reform Act. I don't have to tell you that in 1990, we really were united to learn, and maybe that's the biggest challenge that we face. If you dig into that national report, there's a couple takeaways that I would offer you, and the chairperson asked me to also allow time for discussion, so I want to get through this. But first of all, the bad news is that within the education section, every data point, again, those are the data points that are applied to all 50 states, every data point around Kentucky education showed a decline. There's no way to get around that. The report does highlight some issues that would not surprise you, because nationally, every state is grappling with very parallel issues. Progressive states are thinking hard about reforming in a fundamental way their accountability and assessment system. I am so pleased that that is on your radar. We know that the workforce crisis in the K-12 system is a crisis in Kentucky, but it's not unique to Kentucky. The report also offers, if you dig into it, some research-based ideas around interventions, so it's not just at a macro, but they really dig in to what does it mean to have effective tutoring and mentoring programs to close that achievement gap. And we certainly can talk about those education protocols. But in the time that I have, I really want to make one pitch to you, and that is that the report highlights that as important as pedagogy is, as important as curriculum is, those pale in comparison to non-cognitive factors. And that just makes common sense. I mean, if today is a typical day in Kentucky, over 200,000 kids woke up in deep poverty. If I'm going to school and facing issues of hunger and housing stability, my focus is not going to be on that math lesson. Last year, more than 12,000 kids suffered abuse. If I'm a little boy or I'm a little girl and I'm one of those 12,000 K-12 students coming to school this morning and I experienced abuse last night, there is nothing that that fourth grade teacher can do to truly engage me. Those non-cognitive factors offer, I would respectfully suggest, real opportunities for schools to tackle those issues. Now, I'll give you one of my favorites. Today, Kentucky has more kids in kinship care than any state in the nation. Over 55,000 kids are living with their grandma or grandpa because they have been abused. Now, let's get the scene right. It's 10 o'clock at night, you got a knock on your door, and there's either a frontline DCBS worker or a sheriff, and they've said, "We have taken your grandchildren from their home. Do you want them, or do you want us to put them in a residential facility?" And you have 30 seconds to make that decision. Well, as I mentioned, Judy and I have lots of grandkids in school, and she spent 25 years in school, and I spent 30 years in the school, and yet there is nothing more frightening to me than when they ask me to help them with their math. And that's with some experience. So can you imagine what it means to those 55,000 kids living with a grandma or grandpa? What's great is there are some school districts that understand that being a kinship caregiver, you need a little extra TLC from schools. So what would happen, just what would happen if we as a state made a concentrated effort to integrate kinship families into that support in schools? I think it could make a big difference. And those non-cognitive factors, you and I both know that unless and until those are addressed, academic achievement in the lives of many children are not going to come first. And I simply would close with one observation and a request. Part of our advocacy strategy at KYA is unlikely voices. We have found that especially in the General Assembly, hearing a message from someone they don't expect to hear a message from is really effective. So with all due respect, they expect you, they expect the commissioner to be talking about K-12 issues. That's kind of your job. I would invite, solicit, and ask that you think about becoming voices for those non-cognitive factors. Can you imagine the power if you as a board and the commissioner really weighed in on child welfare policy or looked at juvenile justice systems? That will carry a power. And we've always known that in Kentucky. There was an article about that schools face unique challenges that they have never faced before. The article talks about changes in family, changes in community, changes in the structure of society, and we've never seen anything like this before. But can I let you in on a little secret? That article was written in 1950 by Kentucky's poet laureate, Jesse Stewart. And Jesse Stewart had a solution that long ago. What he wrote was, what Kentucky needs is not more one-room schoolhouses, but more of the spirit of the one-room schoolhouse. Because the spirit of the one-room schoolhouse means that the community wraps its arms around the school, and the school wraps its arms around every kid. And I'm convinced that if we really get into those non-cognitive factors, if we really have communities wrap their arms around the school, that means the school can wrap their arms around kids, then we really can be united to learn. Madam Chair, thank you, and I'm happy to entertain questions, comments, or debate.
Well, I thank you for coming and offering a perspective, certainly the data, the report, but a perspective on the report and what it means in such a provocative way. I thought we could count on you for that, and we appreciate it. Dr. Fletcher, comment?
One of the experiences that I had as a superintendent was to serve as the chair of the Appalachian Regional Advisory Committee. And one of the items, one of the critical issues that was identified was kinship care. And it was for Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Kentucky. And it was almost like you were hearing the same. You could have taken out the state name and placed any other state, and those same type of issues are growing. One of the things that I know a lot of districts work on through their youth service centers is making sure that our youth service centers are connected with all kids, but also those kids that may be being raised by their grandparents, because there is that gap in what's going on and where the kids were now versus a grandparent trying to raise them. And I know a lot of schools work really diligently to make sure that they have those type of supports and resources, but we could always do more. Always do more, and especially as this is a growing need, not just in Kentucky, but nationally, is how do we meet those students' needs? Because if they're hungry, they're not going to be able to learn. If they're unable to connect with the community because maybe they don't have connections because maybe their parents are deceased, maybe their parents are imprisoned, maybe their parents are having drug issues. They have those unique circumstances, and the only way we can meet those is to build relationships with each one of those kids. So one of the things that you'll hear from me, and also I believe from this board, is how do we build those relationships to know more and more about our kids so we can address not only kinship care, but other non-cognitive issues that they may be facing. So I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. And if you have suggestions, I'll go through and read the report and check on that too. But if you have some suggestions for us as a department, please make it known to us at any point.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brooks. You do know that when I was superintendent, and still to this day, I look forward to the Kentucky version of the report. The national version is really helpful, but to contextualize that in our own 120 counties and 171 school districts is really powerful. One of the things I appreciate about you and Kentucky Youth Advocates so much is that you thread a needle around focusing on really hard to absorb data, but no excuses. And I think that's something, when you kind of challenge us today to be an advocate for the social, emotional, non-academic needs of kids, I'm always really sensitive to ensuring that we take a no excuses approach, that these are the realities that many of our young people across the Commonwealth face. I worked with a small, very small, Eastern Kentucky elementary school a few years back where reportedly 40% of their children were being raised by grandparents, and much of that was directly tied to the scourge of opioid addiction and drug abuse and incarceration in that county in Kentucky. And I remember so powerfully that school took no excuses. It was a matter of, this is our challenge, we're going to step up to that and embrace the needs of grandparents. So thank you for that. Thank you for modeling that in your advocacy, and it's something that I aspire to be able to do. My question for you, I heard you after the commissioner on Newsmakers the other night, and you, in the national reports, beginning to expose this even more. Chronic absenteeism is really, really hard to get our minds around. We've been doing some superintendent's work around that. 25% post-COVID, 25% of kiddos now are chronically absent, which is, again, separate from truancy. And it crosses all socioeconomic and other demographic information around kids. And I'm just wondering what you and your team, or the Casey Foundation and others, what kind of solutions are you guys exploring, and what advice might you give us in that regard?
You know, Dr. Young, you and I go way back, and I carry great respect for you. Yeah, that's a really important question. As Dr. Young mentioned, over 1 out of 4 kids in Kentucky are chronically absent. Now, part of what I get away with that the commissioner very wisely, I heard him kind of intuit that he's going to be nuanced. My goal is to have an equal number of Republicans and Democrats mad at me any single day in Frankfort, so I can be a little more upfront. We face a real crossroads in Kentucky because you see 2 streams of thought in the General Assembly. One is the way we're going to deal with chronic truancy is to lock them up. Before the 2014 Juvenile Justice Reform Act, the majority of kids in detention facilities in Kentucky were there because they missed school. Now, I never figured out how that helped a kid get to school if they were locked up, but there is a thread of thinking that that's what we need to do. Well, we absolutely reject that. I think the thing that we're working on, and I do believe that we have found real support and common ground between the governor, Secretary Friedlander, and leadership in both chambers, is a growing awareness of the impact of both adverse childhood experiences and adverse childhood environments. And you all know what that is, whether it's violence or divorce or hunger or poverty. Do you know that more kids in Kentucky have experienced 5 or more ACEs than any state in the nation? Well, the way you attack chronic truancy is not through the courts, it's through looking at those elements of adversity. And so part of what we're hoping happens, working with chair leadership in both chambers, is could we identify we can't tackle all 20 elements of adversity simultaneously, but could we agree that a major causal factor for chronic truancy is this or that or something else, and begin to come together and really focus on that? So I'd love to give you an easier answer, but I think that's going to be flat out a fight come 2025, is which direction are we going to head? Because chronic truancy, not just in the Commonwealth but nationally, is a rising concern, and I think we can attack it smart or we can attack it easy, and we're voting for smart.
Much. Preston, I might lean on you a little bit. I know that the Commissioner's Student Advisory Council is already starting having this conversation, but the more insight, the more intel you can give us about what kids are thinking about in terms of what's keeping them out of school. Why are they making choices to not be at school in such dramatic fashion lately? That would be really, really helpful. So, yeah, jump right in there.
At least from what I've heard, kind of what was mentioned earlier, all those problems at home are kind of distracting them, keeping them away. How can you focus on academics when you have so many problems at home?
Yeah.
So I think addressing those kind of problems at home will definitely help lead to more focus on academics and greater numbers overall.
And Terry knows I believe this, and he does too. You'll see it threaded throughout the report as well, but the more engaging the classroom experience is, the more likely it is that kiddos are going to choose to be present even when it's easier not to be present. So I think a lot of our United We Learn work around competency ed, portrait of a learner, project-based learning, high engagement activities in the classroom is going to be part of the solution, but there's no single answer to that very complex question. So I think it is one of those that the board's going to have to think about in terms of our more strategic goals, Commissioner.
I know we know the answer, but do you have any data about how the children perform academically when they're in kinship homes?
We really don't, because as you probably know, and I understand that school districts don't release, Mr. Commissioner, if I catch the phrase right, unique identifiers. So we can't say how are these kids doing versus others. We do, one of the things that we do at KYA, and these are anecdotal and qualitative data, but that's important. We organize, because one of the things we saw 4 or 5 years ago, that the kinship caregivers had no connectivity. And so we actually are an umbrella for the Kentucky Kinship Coalition. And caregivers come together, and sometimes they weigh in on policy. We just had a couple of those folks testify before an interim committee. Sometimes they're there for training and conversation. We, for instance, and I'm going to where you are, we offer, for instance, some trainings that if I'm a kinship caregiver and I get one of those special ed hearing notices, I mean, it only takes 2 law degrees from Harvard to understand that. And I'm a grandma and I don't even know what IEP and SBARC and all those things are. So we try to get them geared up. When we do kind of qualitative checks on how your kids are doing, I think the thing, and I think Dr. Fletcher referenced that, what they need more than anything is sort of personalized communication from the school. And I don't mean that in a broad brush, but there are just certain terms and expectations that have changed over the years. And again, I think it's so important, without being redundant, to remember that kinship is not a planned event. Nobody sits around the dining room table and says, in 6 months, we're going to transition. It's in an instant. And so suddenly I've inherited 3 kids and I don't have a crib formula or internet connections, but come today or come tomorrow, I'm kind of the default person for school. So I think that what the commissioner mentioned, the more thought that can be given to day-to-day communications, what do your kids really need to be successful? But that's the reason we don't have that data, is privacy concerns and laws.
Yeah, but you don't have to give their names. Why can't you get that information without any names? And
It's a really, really important question. You want to clarify that, Commissioner?
okay.
I think one of the things is we rely so heavily on districts doing their own ad hoc type of reporting. Mm-hmm. Do they collect what they have to collect that data separately? Then you can run reports on, how's this student performed versus others. It's not something that you'll see typically in a report. You may see as, free and reduced lunch versus, low socioeconomic versus others, but it's not data that we publish out and about, because a lot of that's handled through, I would say, ad hoc reporting, if you would.
Districts will pull out that information because they can do that. They know all those kids and their families.
But I'm just thinking, when you go for funding, when the legislature, and you can point this out, then you can say, why do we need funding for these children?
Point where we recognize the dynamics that impact learning. I mean, it's like what the learner presents. Mm-hmm. Then the question for us is, how do we connect with what the learner needs through school, through social services, through advocacy groups, through support for the family. I mean, we're talking whole child here, and it ranges. There are lots of dynamics in the larger culture that we recognize, contributes to what the learner may need in order to benefit from what we have to offer at school. So as we're thinking about this next session of the General Assembly and how we get ready for it, it seems to me this report is urging us to be thinking about a connected agenda, one that recognizes the social emotional dynamic is, it will trump pedagogy every time if we don't get it right. And also, perhaps we need to be more strategic in leveraging allies and our strategizing for advocacy for the students of Kentucky. I mean, Dr. Brooks was pretty provocative at one point. He said public officials are failing our kids. And so I think that we he's presented the data that help us understand the extent of the urgency. And the urgency comes from so many different dynamics. We got special kids who are dealing with the trauma of having family involved in military service in very threatening situations. And we have grandparents who are taking care of some of those kids. You got the kids, I mean, you know, there's so many dynamics in the broader culture that bear on our students, and school is not someplace where you just, you know, you leave all that at the door and you come in and you learn. It doesn't happen. It didn't happen during busing and segregation. It's not happening now. Dr. Todd, please.
Have you had any interaction with the extension agents at UK? I was surprised when I would go around to the different extension agents. There was always an advertisement for a class for grandparents who are parenting. And
It's a great idea.
when you talk about an agency that can get out and help you promote a cause, those folks are passionate.
Yeah.
And they live in the communities where they see the problems. It's not like sending a faculty member out to a farmer and say, "What's your problem?" They say, "I don't have any problem." But you send John from down the hall that they go to church with, and they'll talk to them openly. But they do have a conference coming up on September the 3rd for Grandparents as Parents Conference in Fayette County. So I'd encourage you to
Great
talk
suggestion,
to them.
Mr. President.
Well, it's hard to imagine that this doesn't impact teacher burnout and teacher shortages. So I think we just need to really look at, I mean, they're the first line in helping these children cope and stay in school. So we need to look at what supports we're giving to teachers and like our education, like college system, like how we're preparing teachers. You know, I think in my own classes, I don't do enough with this. I mean, so, I don't know, it's just, I think they're all connected.
I just want to make sure and clarify that my remarks were not intended to be deficit in my mentality around kinship care and grandparents raising their children. We owe them a debt of gratitude, and often after that adverse childhood experience of losing mom or dad in the home and moving to the grandparents setting, their lives actually begin to normalize and stabilize. But I think, Holly, to your point, we don't do a good job in ed prep to talk about the kinds of different family environments in which kids can find themselves and how we can be better supports of older parents and grandparents raising younger children. And it's just an example that we can take that would be strategic in the way we think about how to better support kids in the classroom.
I want to go back and visit what Board Member Long stated. I think there's also opportunity for us to find better means of gathering data, because a lot of times when we go to leverage things, we need data behind that. So how can we, as a Kentucky Department of Education, better gather that type of data? Now, honestly, I'll have to find out more about what we have now, but how can we better gather that data and have more numbers there so that when we need to approach, whether it be with our ed prep programs or when we need to go to the legislature, we have that data readily available. So all this is great discussion, but I want to go back to I believe you're correct. How can we get better data to support our needs? So good point.
Well, Dr. Brooks, thank you for helping to kind of focus the mind one more time. It's all about the kids. If it's not about the kids, you know, that would be real unfortunate. And it is really good to be reminded of what a reliable and well-informed advocate you are for our kids. Thanks so much for being here.
You know, each of you and the commissioner do believe that kids count, so thanks.
Colleagues, I'd like to return to our agenda. The next item is our consent agenda. As a reminder, this item, which requires a vote, consists of the consent agenda and allows for approval in one action. KDE staff identified these items as those that are non-controversial and routine in nature. The consent agenda was distributed to members in advance of the meeting to allow sufficient time for review. And at this time, I would like to ask, are there any items that any member would like to move from the consent agenda to the discussion items? If there are no items to move, then I would ask the board to entertain a motion to approve all items on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Mike. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. The next item, excuse me, on the agenda is involves a report from Boyle County. Boyd, I've written it wrong. Boyd County. I'd like to ask the board to please come to the table. Superintendent Bartlett and KDE Associate Commissioner Matt Ross will present a financial report from Boyd County.
Can you hear me?
Welcome. Yes.
Good morning. I'm Matt Ross. I'm the Associate Commissioner in the Office of Finance and Operations, and I'll let our guests introduce themselves, and then I'll sort of kick us off.
My name is Larry Barber, and I am the new Finance Director for Boyd County Schools as of 3 weeks ago.
Bill Boblett, Superintendent of Boyd County Public Schools.
Don Flew, retired Finance Director from Boyd County, assisting in the transition.
So I think most of the board may be familiar with Boyd County's sort of situation, but we have some new members, so I'll try to give a high-level sort of recap. At the end of last fiscal year, Boyd County had a shortfall, and we were alerted that of their financial situation. So in order to help them make through the end of the year in a very unusual sort of circumstance, KDE was able to provide them with a loan of about $645,000 to help them get through the end of the fiscal year. And as part of that loan, there were some conditions, and one of those conditions were that they would come and provide financial reports and sort of give us a status. They would have been making moves to sort of right the ship. So we've asked them here today to sort of tell you where they're at and answer any questions and sort of provide you with an update. So I'll let you all go ahead.
On behalf of Boyd County Public Schools Board of Education and all stakeholders in BCPS, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would specifically like to say thank you to former Interim Commissioner Robin Kinney, Commissioner Robbie Fletcher, Che Ritter, Matt Ross, Marshall Smith, and others who have helped us through this time. Through team meetings, personal visits, follow-up phone calls, emails, and many check-ins, I've been amazed by the support we've received from Kentucky Department of Education. In a time when many organizations are lacking in customer service, your team is the example of high-quality customer service, and I appreciate that from the team at KDE. As Matt said, on May 23rd, I was notified that our district is facing an anticipated budget shortfall. This issue was an obvious concern, and work to determine the possible shortfall began immediately. Early the following week, KDE was contacted for assistance. Due to the fact that the amount could not be verified through quick research, a team from KDE was sent to our district to assist in this matter. The team determined the amount was right around $645,000. This deficit resulted mainly from under budgeting and overspending in several budget categories. A few big ticket items that caused a shortfall were the purchase and remodeling of a new building to house our alternative school, due to this facility that we were currently in closing, purchase of some sports lightings due to safety concerns, and also overstaffing at several of our schools. Many of these folks were paid through ESSER funds that ran out in mid-March in 2024, causing the general fund to have to pick up the balance of the salaries. As superintendent, I take full responsibility with this budget issue and have taken the following corrective measures. We've hired a new finance director, we implemented a salary freeze, we've employed a financial consultant, and also employed Mr. Flew to assist during the transition. We've not filled some open positions or reassigned staff at our central office. We've created a budget committee, or we'll be creating a budget committee, and revising the budget reporting process to our Board of Education. These measures, along with other gatekeeping measures, will help to ensure issues like this do not happen again in the future. The above changes aim to minimize the impact on student achievement, which is always our number one concern, while ensuring better financial management. I'd like to have Mr. Flew and Mr. Barber to speak just a minute or two about our end-of-year, 2024 end-of-year fiscal budget, and then our continuing budget, our budget into 2025.
I'm happy to tell you that as of July 31st, looking at the end of 2024's numbers, we are at a fund balance in the general fund of $1,631,000, which equates to approximately 5.67% as an ending balance. That includes the $645,000 that was advanced by KDE, and if you remove that, we would still be at a 3.43 ending balance. We're optimistic about some revenues that will be coming in August that will also be credited to 2024 before we do our final closeout. Also, we are working on our 2025 budget. We're still doing some tweaks to that, but as of right now, we're looking at a contingency of $677,000, which would equate to 2.25%, which would get us above the minimum state requirements, and we're hoping to be able to again do some work in reducing expenditure budgets and hopefully improving our carry forward to improve that contingency percentage.
Thank you. Then Matt, you want to clarify and summarize for us, please?
Sure. There's no real action item here. This is just sort of a report. You know, when KDE was made aware of the shortfall, you know, I think our primary concern was making sure that they could meet payroll for their teachers at the end of the fiscal year. This was their summer payrolls, which many of you know, there's a series right at the end of the year. These teachers had done the work. There was nothing else really that could be done. We wanted to make sure those teachers got paid. And then I think, you know, through some good fortune into this new fiscal year, so they've had some tax payments come in, which has really helped them. We feel like they're making the right, you know, decisions going forward. We will get their budget by September, sometime in September. So we can provide you with sort of an update on what that looks like. You know, it's a very unfortunate situation, but we think this was an isolated occurrence. And we are hopeful that with their new procedures, we're not going to have this under budgeting, overspending. We think this was a one-year mistake, but it was hopefully it's an isolated, and it's not going to happen going forward, right? So it's an unusual thing for KDE to advance money to a district. They will repay that. We were fortunate enough to be able to do that. We might not always be able in that financial position to be able to do that. But I think we're moving in the right decision. It was a very difficult time, a very difficult decision for everybody. But I think it was necessary to make sure that these teachers got paid. You know, that was, I think, our primary concern. And then, but we're hopeful going forward that we're moving in the right direction, that the district is moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for coming, and thank you for the reaching out to KDE and finding. I we're just confident that you're always going to find someone who's going to put shoulder to your shoulder and try to solve problems. Commissioner Fletcher, do you have to, oh, you have a question? Okay.
I guess I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Flew, you said that as of July 31st, you did have a positive fund balance even without the advance? Okay, all right, good. And about how long do you imagine that it will take you to be able to pay the advance back?
We are required to pay it this fiscal year, and the budget that we're building includes those payments. So that's one of the reasons why our contingency percentage right now that we're looking at is 2.25.
Okay.
It would be more
if you didn't have to pay it back.
But
Got
that
it.
includes paying KDE back, so that's one of the reasons why we're where we are.
And that contingency was at over $600,000? Okay,
I have it written down. 677,000.
Okay.
Is the projected contingency, and we think we will be able to do better than that once we do some more fine tuning.
thank you so much.
The
Thank
terms
you.
of the loan agreement require payment on a schedule, and I think.
Oh,
it
on a
begins,
schedule, okay.
Is it early next year?
January.
February, okay. Thank you.
One of the comments that I wanted to make, first of all, Superintendent Bobbitt, thank you to you and your staff. You've been very transparent. You've been very open. I know this is difficult for you and for your staff. But on the other hand, the questions, you've answered every question, you and your staff, and you've been very transparent as we can tell. The first comment I made was our legal team and also with Dr. Kinney started, and we worked on an agreement for that payback, and I think it starts in February. I think there's 3 installments, if I'm recalling the agreement correctly. And also part of that too is to come here and report, some level of accountability there. But also too, as far as some of the other things, as far as moving forward, we did put together a management review team. Dr. Kelly Foster, and a group was there this week just to review everything and talking with Dr. Foster. We don't have that report yet. It's not available because we just started the work, I think, on Monday. With that being said, she's been very complimentary of your group, your team, of coming forward and talking about being transparent. But again, our approach in that review was how can we help Boyd County to make sure that doesn't happen again. Now, of course, if you get in, we're going to be looking at everything, looking at different items, to see if there needs to be a management audit. But right now in that review process, it's more about, okay, this is where we are. We own it. When I say we, Boyd County, Kentucky Department of Education, we own it, and we're going to do our best to try to help to make sure things like that doesn't happen again. So, again, my comment first and foremost, thank you for your transparency. Thank you for your work. And also, too, I want to take the opportunity to thank Dr. Foster and her team for taking that time and going into Boyd County and say, okay, what's going on and how can we help? And also, too, to our finance and operations to sit down and say, okay, this is where we are in our budget. This is the amount that we can afford, and how can we help Boyd County? Again, this is a tough situation for all of us, but on the other hand, I believe there's a lot of determination to make it right, if you will, moving forward. And I'd like to thank you folks for that.
So, as the staff note suggests, the commissioner is recommending that the board entertain a motion to approve the Boyd County Schools' request to expend funds in excess of income. Is there such a motion?
I make that motion.
Two items there together. Would you like me to explain that one a little bit, why we're doing that?
Well, please, if there's, now that we have a motion, let me see if we have a second.
Second.
All right, Matt, please.
Sure. So pursuant to statute and regulation, when a district sort of comes into the situation where they're going to spend beyond their budget, there has to be a declaration of emergency, and so we've received that request from the Boyd County Board of Education, and so it requires the action of the board to approve their request to spend funds in excess of their income, their revenue. So that's the motion. Thank you.
We have a motion on the
So made.
table. Are there further questions, comments, inquiries? Are we ready to vote? I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Thank you. I thank the Boyd County delegation. Appreciate your being here. Matt, thank you. And we are looking forward to working further with you on these matters.
Thank you.
Now we would invite Deputy Commissioner Thomas Tucker, KDE Chief Academic Officer Mickey Ray, and KDE Policy Advisor Sarah Peace to come to the table. Thank
Members
you.
of the
Good
Kentucky
morning.
Board of Education, Commissioner Fletcher. This is an amendment that addresses civic education, and we'll let this outstanding team walk you through a couple things as it relates to civics education and this amendment. But before we began, we've heard comments from our commissioner and from the board here about working in unison with stakeholders and partners to bring about more equitable opportunities and access for our students. And we're happy to state that we work with various groups. We get comments, and you'll hear those comments from Mick and Sarah here in a little bit, feedback. But we also work with external groups, and we're happy to inform you all that we'll be continuing our work with the Ali Center as well as the Association for Teaching Black History in Kentucky to promote history and civics education here in the Commonwealth. So they've offered some resources and continue to build those partnerships. We'll now turn it over to Mickey and Sarah.
Morning, Commissioner, Chair Robinson, Vice Chair Young, and members of the board. We are bringing forward a required amendment to our minimum high school graduation regulation due to a legislative bill that was passed in this most previous session. You can see there on the slide, House Bill 535 from the 2024 session does require that beginning with students entering grade 9 in the 25-26 academic year, they are now required to complete a civic literacy component. And there is an option there for local districts. They may implement a half-credit civics course, or they can maintain the current version of the civics test that's being given to students. On the next slide, I'm going to go in just a little bit more detail about that. You can see there that the local board may choose one of those two options. So for the first one, that half-credit course, it must include the areas that are identified in the bill. And I wanted you to know that those areas are currently embedded in the Kentucky Academic Standards. The Kentucky Academic Standards for Social Studies, the civic strand. So districts can choose to embed the course in the 3 existing credits for social studies, or they may elect to add on an additional half credit. And we have some language. So Sarah has linked in the slides for you the supplemental guidance that was created for this, for local decision making. And there is a possibility for districts to add that as an additional component if they so choose. Now the civics test, if that's the mechanism that districts choose to move forward with, there are some changes to that. So you'll notice, if you're familiar with the current policy, there was at least a 60% pass rate in order for students to meet the requirement of the law. Now it would move in 25-26 for those incoming freshmen at a 70% accuracy, and there is a reporting requirement that's also included if they maintain the decision to keep the civics test. And this would apply to all students, including early graduation program students. On the next slide, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah so that you can see the exact language that is the proposed amendment to the regulation.
I'll use this one. Thank you. It is a pleasure to see you again. The amendment that is made in the regulation itself is actually very simple. Previously, the language had stated that students were able to, let me go to the previous page, pass a civics test as required by KRS 158141. Now it just will state successfully meet the civics requirement pursuant to 158141. This will allow districts the flexibility that they need to make that choice between the options. And then the student then would still be able to meet the requirement under this language. And then on the next slide, we do have some technical changes, cleanup language. One piece is that we did include as a material incorporated by reference the letter of intent form. The KDE is required to provide districts with this form. We have already, it hasn't changed, but now it is technically part of the law, which is required under 158142. We also cleaned up outdated language, improved clarity and readability anytime that we can. An example of that is that we were able to remove the 2018-19 requirements for students entering ninth grade and beyond. And so that's a very exciting change for us because it will reduce just the length of the regulation alone. We're happy to take any questions.
Questions? Yes. Holly?
So does the local board they have to choose one? You can't do a combination, like give the test and then the people that didn't pass take the half credit?
So they would be able to determine that for the students, but it would have to have that wording in the policy that the option would be for both. But I do think we'll have districts that have some students taking the civics test and some who are enrolled in the credit course.
When it talks about the civics course, I know a lot of high schools already offer that now. So is there going to be any kind of requirement that they have to validate that they cover those certain things? Or, I mean, what would be that regulation? Because I agree with Ms. Bloodworth, like when you get kids transferring in, you may have one system and the kids coming from another one may have already taken a civics class that maybe doesn't meet the requirements. So how will we help schools know those type of things?
I think that ultimately, if the school district already has the civics course in place, it's aligned to that civics strand in the CAS for Social Studies, and all of the language included in the new law in statute would be covered by that civic strand. So all should be well there. But I believe that they would want to check for that accuracy in terms of the students beginning in 25, 26, but I don't foresee that they would have to make significant curricular or instructional changes.
Other questions, comments? I delight in seeing how the KDE staff find these opportunities to shorten regulations, to clean them up. I will, yes, Holly.
So a student with a severe disability, if the school opted just for the test, but they can't use instructional aids or anything like that, how would that work?
The statute does require that students who have accommodation through an IEP or 504, that those are honored.
Ready to propose a motion to approve the amendments to 704 KAR 3:305, minimum requirements for high school graduation. Is there a motion to approve these regulations?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Borchers. And is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Trimble. We have a motion and a second. Further comment or discussion, debate? I'll call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you so much. The amendments have been approved. The next, let's see, we'll now ask to come to the table Rhonda Sims and KDE Advisor Jennifer Larkin to present an amendment regarding the administration code for Kentucky's Education Assessment Program.
Good morning, everyone. Great to be with you. And, we had an exciting conversation about a future yesterday. But, even though we're excited about building a new house, we have to maintain the one we're living in. So this is some cleanup. information just really to update what's currently happening, and that's the series of 2 regs that we've brought forward with you today. The regulation that ends in 080, which is the administration code, is a regulation that requires annual training by anyone who is administering assessments that are used in the accountability system, and that is a federal expectation to make sure that you ensure consistent administration of assessments. And so there is a code training. The code is used for any assessment that feeds into accountability reporting. And so I have with me our wonderful policy advisor, Jennifer Larkins, today. So she's going to walk you through specifically sort of the cleanups and updates that we need to do with this administration reg.
Thank you. So this is a regulation that includes a material incorporated by reference, and that incorporated document includes most of the proposed amendments that we're bringing to you today. Can I scoot this bit?
Yeah,
thank you.
Do that.
So on the first bullet, you'll see there that, as Rhonda mentioned, we've transitioned to online testing. So we're making some changes as a result of that. So the document that's incorporated is structured in a way that lists acceptable and not acceptable practices related to the administration of state-required assessments. And a lot of that is connected to test security. So how do we keep the test content confidential? Who has access to it? How we store test materials securely and things like that. Currently, it lists paper test booklets and answer documents as secure materials, but because the student testing tickets and seal codes, those online components, will allow access to test content, we also want those to be considered secure test materials and treated as such. Then also, there are some minor differences in the way that an online test administration operates versus a paper-based test administration. So we would like to update some language regarding, to account for that. Then on the following couple slides, we're going to talk about how we would like to address some changes in the allegation process. And then finally, because this regulation hasn't been amended since 2014, we'd just like to make sure that all the language is updated and things are clarified if they've been confusing in the past. So on the slide that you see now, we have a section in this document that lists 4 different things that we say currently that district assessment coordinators are not required to report as inappropriate testing practices or allegations. And what we found, though, is that the district assessment coordinators actually do report these as allegations, and then we also believe that some of them really should be reported as allegations. So specifically this bottom bullet, students with accommodations but were not provided that accommodation, that really should be an allegation. So we would like to delete everything that you see there in italicized font within the brackets, and then add language to make it clear that all allegations of inappropriate testing practices should be reported to KDE. And then on the next slide, we'd like to propose a change in the allegation process. Currently, if an allegation is reported through the system that KDE has set up, our testing allegations coordinator will investigate that, and if the allegation is warranted, she will make recommendations about what should happen, and then she brings that before a testing board of review. And that's just a small group of KDE employees who review those findings and her recommendations. But the group only meets monthly or sometimes less frequently than that. So because of that, it causes a backlog in the processing, and so that people have to wait a longer time to get the results, the outcome of what that allegation is going to be. So we would propose to remove that. We did ask about the agreement between the testing board of review and what's brought to them, and we were told that very rarely has the board of review ever had a difference of opinion in what the allegation coordinator brought forward. And then in those few times where maybe there was a difference of opinion. It was just nothing that significantly impacted the outcome. So we would like to propose to delete what's in italicized font and then add the underlined and make recommendations to the Commissioner of Education. So just to skip that testing board of review. And so I'll stop there and see if you have any questions about that.
So board members, are there questions? Yes. Mr.
On the
Borges.
allegations with working ahead, with it being online now, does that, it still doesn't, you can still work ahead even though that it's not computerized?
We do still have students who require the use of paper materials.
But it's a very small count of students. It's usually students that have a seizure disorder where they cannot have the scrolling of the computer screen. So it's a very small number. Also, we'll just mention for background, we work very closely on the allegation process with the Office of Legal Services. And so the actual investigation and coordinator is out of the legal office, and they've assisted with this cleanup and suggestions for improving this reg. So we appreciate the team down in OLS.
The section about not filing allegations. If I understood correctly, you're just going to delete the examples, but it doesn't mean that the first 3 examples still aren't reasons to not file an allegation.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And we did also bring this in front of, obviously, the SCAC group, School Curriculum Assessment Accountability Council, as well as LSAC. And so we had their comments and actually made a tweak to the language after working with LSAC. We removed some new language that we thought could be confusing.
And did the testing board of review weigh in on not being part of that process anymore?
I'm not aware that they did.
Yeah, probably not. The current board may not have even been put in place yet with the legal office. So I don't believe they did it. It is usually members from other offices in KDE who serve on that committee. So I don't think there was any issue about removing it. A little more time for other work. Yeah.
Dr. Robinson had to step away, so I'll take the gavel for a moment. Dr. Pate.
Mention the commissioner specifically. I'm assuming you're okay with it. Okay.
Excellent.
And sir, I will mention that since you don't have the all of the information right there in front of you, that referring recommendations to the Commissioner of Education was part of the process already, but it will just kind of skip that testing board of review and go straight to him.
I have one question. What's the dissemination plan to get this information to the district?
We will actually do training in the next school year, so nothing impacts this current school year. The reg will go through its process. If it reaches a conclusion with these edits, then we would conduct training for the following school year. So there would be a little lag time here to get the training in place and communication out. The primary audience are district assessment coordinators and building assessment coordinators, and then teachers as they're actually being trained annually. So we'll update that training and make sure that word gets out before next school year.
About how many allegations are there a year?
Todd, do you have that number off your head? And I think Beth is here somewhere.
Beth is right behind you and can come up and give that data.
Feel free to.
This year there were 441, I believe.
441 processed this year. That includes many times minor things as well as something more serious. I don't know, Beth, if you have any specific comment, if you want to join us here. This is Beth Bales, who does a wonderful job as the coordinator, allegations coordinator out of the legal office.
Yeah, we had a 441 this year, but it has varied. Since I took this position, it was right after COVID, so of course there were a couple years where there weren't very many. There may have been 200 one year, and I think last year we had over 400 as well.
It's out of hundreds of thousands of test takers. So.
What that looks like, what was that percentage-wise?
Yeah, let me, mention, I'll give you this metric. We do most of the testing online, and an individual child will take more than one test. So my third grader, I take a reading test and math test. We have over 1.5 million tests that were administered when you add all of those numbers up. So 414 would be a tiny, tiny little percentage of that. And sometimes they are issues of sort of just inattention, something, simple happened. And obviously, if it's something more serious, then one option might be to remove a student's score, that sort of thing. But many times these are very processing kinds of issues. But a very small percentage of all the tests that are administered.
Back. I would be open to the board asking the board to entertain a motion to approve the proposed amendments to the Code of Kentucky's Educational Assessment Program. Do we have such a motion? Thank you, Ms. Woods. Do we have a second? Thanks, Dr. Pate. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment to the regulation, please respond by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. OAA, you may continue on into the next item, accountability, administrative procedures, and guidelines.
Regulation 240 is the rules around how school students are included in a school level accountability or district level accountability or the state. And so the rule of accountability is students must have been enrolled with you 100 instructional days. That's called a full academic year, and that's, again, a federal requirement that you have a definition to full academic year in place. So these particular guidelines, again, are just an update to bring us into sort of the current modern world in which we're living, where we've moved to online and virtual programs for schooling versus just all in paper and in person. And this is something we're doing in partnership with our Office of Education and Technology. So they will be up for the next portion of a companion reg. So just to put in place as we go to the next slide, this is around how you code students, and we train our district assessment coordinators on this and have opportunities for schools to review data and make changes to that. So it's what students are included in how, and how do we handle alternative programs. And remember, we have schools and we have programs that are part of schools. If you are a school, you potentially could be identified for those federal classifications of CSI and TSI, Comprehensive Support and Improvement. So 240 is being brought forward because we did not have language in 240 for students that are full-time enrolled online virtual remote learning. So this is a student that their full experience is in an online environment, and we simply did not have language in the regulation around that online option that has continued to grow since our experience with COVID. So we need to have some language both for directions for districts and for us as a state to process information for those students that are enrolled in those online programs. And so Jenny's going to walk us through the actual changes we're proposing. And they're fairly minor in this regulation, and then we'll have more conversation with our partners from OET.
Sure. Thank you. So on the next slide, you'll see in the first bullet that we would like to replace the classification of A1 school with the term accountable school. So we have a lot of different state school classifications, number letter combinations, A1, B1, A2, excuse me, and so on, mostly used internally at the department, but we had the A1 designation listed throughout this regulation in over a dozen places, but it's a very limiting way of including it here so that it kind of shows that only these specific kinds of schools can be an accountable school, and by accountable, that they are eligible to receive those federal classifications of CSI, TSI, and so on. So we would propose that we use accountable school instead, and then that will give us flexibility if other school classifications are introduced that could somehow be accountable. Excuse me. And then in section 1.4, that's the section 1 is definition section, we would like to introduce that term full-time enrolled online virtual and remote learning program because we're referencing it later in the regulation. On the next slide, you'll see where most of the amendments that we're proposing are included, starting with Section 4. And this section is about how we report results. So we report for accountable schools, and we also report for the programs that are non-accountable programs. But the virtual programs weren't included there. So we've just added here that they also will be included in annual reporting, that the reporting for those programs will be separate from the accountable school reporting, and that the unique features and characteristics will be included in those reports. And then in Section 5, we'd also like to add these virtual programs in the reporting in the one of three categories. So Kentucky's accountability system is level-based. We report by elementary, middle, and high school. So just including them in that reporting, that they will also be reported if they have an elementary level at that level, middle at the middle level, high at a high level. So those are the proposed changes for that. And then you may be wondering about the accountability part. And so that is actually, we've proposed to address that in the department's regulation for the virtual programs, so that students would be required to be enrolled in an accountable school if they're attending a virtual program that is aligned with this regulation 704 KAR 3535.
So we probably want to move forward one slide. I think Jenny was referencing that. Thank you.
So, I'm sorry, not that one. I don't,
Is that right?
yeah, it's not the one,
Okay.
but yeah, maybe it's just out.
Yeah.
I may have made a mistake.
So I would guess at this point, we would ask for questions from you on this piece. And again, there will be the companion reg up next that will be actual referencing the online program. But this really is just an update to make sure we can include these students and communicate clearly that their expectation of inclusion into accountability like all students in Kentucky.
This reg, yes.
So I mean, really, it's just a modernization to reflect.
Yes.
Gotcha.
That we're in the online virtual world, yeah,
Right.
and including them.
So how do we give the students that are in a virtual setting the state test and monitor those and all of that?
Come into a location to take the test, but they take it online. So we don't have, the term that your question really is around is something called remote testing. The idea that a student could sit in their living room and take the test online. We do not have remote testing in Kentucky. There are a few states that have explored that. It is obviously sort of a security issue. You have to monitor students when they're taking it. It's kind of invasive monitoring with cameras. And so most of the time, a lot of states have not moved forward with remote testing. So we don't have remote. The idea the student would be in their home potentially taking the assessment. But what happens if you support a virtual program, those students come into some location and they're connected to a computer that is connected through the Kentucky system. So they're on a school computer, not like their home iPad. And that is connected, and then that handles all the security and everything of flowing the test out. And so we have a few programs that are large enough that this year they actually had space in areas of the state. Then they brought students together because they have a statewide population. So they would come to a location and take the assessment. And I think that's part of the agreement with parents when the student is enrolling, that they'll be tested as part of the system since they're a public school.
Saying that everyone that's in that kind of setting would be assigned to a school, like their test scores would be assigned to a school?
Right, because you need to have the schools, the students' performance show up in an accountable school. Otherwise, there's no accountability connection for that student. So if a student is served in a program, their scores go back to the school that's involved with that program. And so if I open a virtual program, then I need to make, the decision is that student needs to be connected to an accountable school. in that, because it's not really a school, it's a program that's supporting a school. And this happens very routinely with a lot of our districts. We might have a cooperative that hosts a virtual program, and maybe students from Harrison County will attend, students from Fayette County will attend, and those students remain connected to their home school, and their accountability flows back to their home school.
Similar to Holly's, it gets murkier in the new attendance boundary question. So it is student by student in terms of how the scores flow back from a virtual academy to the school. And I think we're going to talk about 100 days in just a minute. I'm thinking about virtual academies that are serving multi-districts.
That's right.
And how those are tracked inside the system.
Right. And it is student by student. Now, in some cases, for the ones that are a little more traditional, it's linked up very tightly to the school. You know, if it's a Harrison County student, that's right, because they're staying very connected. But let's just take a program that serves all over the state of Kentucky. Then it would be important that those students are coded to an accountable school, and it would be tied to where the district that's offering that statewide program.
Me wonder, and I should have asked already, Rhonda, but it just started kind of followed a discussion we had at dinner last night. What does part-time look like? So this is about full-time virtual enrolled, but we do have students that share time and do part-time virtual enrollment. That might be a Marty question.
That may be a Marty question as well. Because again, even, you know, we have even traditionally before online had some students occasionally in part-time. And part of that is who has really the control of the student's education. You know, we've had homeschool students, for instance, who come to school for one class. There would not be linked into the public system for testing.
Marty question, do we have elementary students in full-time virtual remote?
More of our OET question, but I do believe so. I think we have students of all ages and levels.
We do have students enrolled K through 5 in full-time online virtual remote programs. However, we are in Kentucky experiencing very similar to the national trend where those numbers are declining post-pandemic. And so we're seeing very similar declines in enrollment in lower grade levels.
Do prompt, perhaps we might benefit from kind of an enrollment overview based on structure of the program and who is sponsoring, and the important question, who is accountable? Holly, please.
That was my question, was that program that is offering to a lot of districts, do they have accountability too? Are we able to see they're being effective, it's not being effective?
This is again that sort of separation of assessment and accountability. Any program that's a program and not a school, we are reporting their assessment results. So you can go on the school report card and you can see how students are performing. If you're a program, you don't have all of the information and data that leads to an accountability status. So you're not listed as a CSI school, potentially you're not listed with a color in the accountability system, but how your students are performing is listed by where you're assessed and where you're enrolled. And so that is sort of a separation of assessment and accountability. But this regulation that we're bringing for you is more to make sure that students are also appropriately included into the accountability reporting. They'll automatically show up in the assessment results for where they're enrolled as an online program. Good morning.
So Rhonda, so if I have a virtual academy and I'm in a district, those students, if they're fourth graders, are going to be coded back to my fourth grade elementary. So they can't be standalone. They have to be tied back to an accountability school.
That's
regardless.
correct.
Once I take them, if I'm a virtual school and I take kids from other districts, then they become if I take them as my academy, they become accountable to myself.
And-
One
yeah.
other question.
Mhm.
Some of these academies in the past have done the, performance-based. And I guess we'll get into that 100-day portion of it once we get into that, because the academies, virtual, they don't sometimes have the same school days as a school district. So we'll talk about that, I take it?
Yeah, we will address that in the companion administrative regulation as well, but that still does remain an option for virtual performance-based. That's been an option for over a decade for our schools and our programs, and the addressing of procedurally in our districts, it is a primary enrollment and a secondary enrollment. It's procedurally how it plays out in our programs across the state. And this is not just for online virtual remote programs. Other programs do a procedural primary enrollment and a secondary enrollment, but you described it exactly how it would play out.
A lot of times when we talk about performance-based, that's usually with attendance also too. Like if you have, like for example, if a high school has a student in 4, when it comes to funding, if they have 4 classes, they pass 3 of them, then we can basically get a 0.75 credit for them, 3 out of 4.
Correct.
So a lot of times when we talk about performance-based, a lot of that goes back to credits and funding and that nature too, and attendance, if you will.
Let's take the second step then, so we can go to the next step. I'm going to ask the board to entertain a motion to approve the proposed amendments to 703 KAR 5:240. Accountability, administrative procedures, and guidelines. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Further questions, debate, comment? Let's call the, yes.
So I'm just from a small district. How much impact could, like, a few scores from a remote academy that really I don't have anything to do with, how much could that impact my district accountability?
So I'm going to start here, and Jenny, you feel free to add in. I think the goal of these changes is so that doesn't occur, what you've just described, because we want to make sure that the district is connected to that student being in accountability. So if you have a student from that small district that is joined a program that's some statewide sort of program, then the district offering that big statewide program will be the accountable school for that student. If a small district opens their own, like our example from Mr. Borgers, if a small school system opens their own, they're keeping that connection with their students. They are their students, they're residing there, they're providing the service, so they are being connected to the accountable school in that district. So this change in this regulation is to make sure you don't have students coding back when there has been no connection to that local district. So that's what it's designed to prevent in the processing.
Further exploration and discussion and understanding. So in order to complete the package, we need to move to the next item, if you will. So we would ask Associate Commissioner David Couch. Oh, I didn't call for a vote. Thank you. It takes a village. All those in favor of proposed amendments, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Thank you. We have amended 703 KAR 5:240. Now we will go to an amendment for 704 KAR 3:535, full-time enrolled online virtual programs. So we will invite David to please join the group at the table, and who else? Marty. Oh, Marty, you stay. Thomas? Nikki? You've got a team for this.
Yes,
Todd,
we
you
do.
paying attention? Are you, okay. Todd's tuned in on this. So please, I will turn it over to you folks.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I will speak a bit on this proposed amendment. But as you can see, this is an agency-wide conversation, and it's been agency-wide collaborative work. The theme for these companion proposed amendments is cleanup. So 2 years ago, we had the opportunity to propose the establishment of this administrative regulation. It came on the heels of a waiver action that was requested by our superintendents through pandemic, knowing that that would be temporary and that the target at that point in time was to move towards a permanent option. This is a powerful conversation. So, moving towards a permanent option as requested by our superintendents. And so the proposed the amendments to the administrative regulation that you have before you are really pretty straightforward and simple. I do want to clarify that they were well received by the local superintendent's advisory. And they really get at what I've been saying is one new thing, one clarifying thing, and then one point of emphasis that we wanted to make. The only new thing is that students in our full-time enrolled online virtual remote programs, as Associate Commissioner Sims already stated, they will be enrolled in an accountable school to ensure that they are included in the accountability process and accountability program. And so that's important to us. The majority of our historical online virtual and remote programs across the state have already been doing the reporting as stated. And so that's not necessarily a new thing. It's well received at the local school district level. Our programs that are doing this work, they want to celebrate the work they're doing by providing these kind of opportunities to students. This is a very small percentage of overall student enrollment across the state, but it's a very important part. We found, obviously, highlighted through the pandemic work, that there are certain percentage of students who accelerated with these kind of opportunities that are full-time, remote, online, and virtual. And so this opportunity cleans up the accountability part of the conversation. So that's in section 5.2. And I did want to include, because of some questions, some data sampling of our programs across the state. So in a sampling of 7 programs, 5 of the 7 programs, their enrollment is 90%, around 90% in-district resident students, okay? So we do have programs across the state that have and engage in non-resident student enrollment. That new statute that our districts are implementing also pertains to some of our programs across the state. But again, 5 of the 7 that we sampled just recently were vast majority, 90% in-district resident students. We do have one program in the state that had a pretty extreme spike in enrollment. That's the only program across the state that we consider what we refer to as a managed school approach. So they have an external partner that does a lot of work for them. However, they do hire Kentucky certified teachers to do that work. But that's one program. 6 of the 7 programs already have primary enrollment in an accountable school. So this new addition to this administrative regulation is not a big deal for them. They already do this. The other program sampled will have some decisions to make, and again, these will go into effect in the 25-26 school year. 3 of the 6 already do a procedural secondary enrollment in their online virtual remote program. That is considered, which is a new classification for us, as an A8 classification. That's a full-time enrolled online virtual program as listed. We've only had that classification in Kentucky for 1 year. This will be our 2nd school year. The first year we saw 6 programs that converted to that classification. To start this upcoming school year, we have 12 programs across the state that will be listed as an A8 program. So the key takeaways are really the majority of the programs already do this primary enrollment in an accountable school. So that's good. The majority of programs only enroll in-resident students, although we do have programs that are engaging in enrolling non-resident students, just as we do in person. And then 2 of the programs sampled mostly non-resident enrollment. They do already do an enrollment in their accountable school. So that we felt like that was a good sampling to understand the impact. The clarification, that's in section 6C, and that's a clarification that teachers must be employed by the school district. And that's something that we clarified early on in this work. We had this discussion with the Kentucky Board of Education, and so we wanted to clarify that and include that in these amendments. And then the emphasis that local boards adopt an annually review policy and procedure for their operation of their full-time program. This is something that we felt was already included, but based on some questions and some work in the growth of and improvement of these programs, we felt like we wanted to emphasize that. And so that's in section 2, where we called that out. And then the other amendments that you see are minor technical modifications. An example is in section 10, where we get into the question of performance-based, virtual performance-based. That was already in the administrative regulation. We just wanted to pull it out and make it its own section. And so, so that statement is, as before, if enrolled through performance-based courses and enrollment, then that's not covered by this administrative regulation. This administrative regulation focuses on attendance-based online virtual remote enrollment. And so we wanted to share the one new thing, the one clarifying thing, and the one emphasis for your consideration. Any questions?
Comments? This is the companion, I'm not going to say capstone, but the maybe the infrastructure piece of. Lou, did you have a?
No, I just checked with Meredith. She's going to put this deck in the portal, so you can hone in on that one.
It's currently attached to the presentation that Associate Commissioner Sims gave, but I'll put the one slide.
Oh, go back one. It's fine. Just go back one.
I'll put it in there.
Okay.
Clearly, we will be digging more into assessment and accountability in our upcoming work. These regulation changes kind of set us up to be able to make explorations and to account for some of the realities that presently exist, that we want to clarify the obligations and the responsibilities. So
I think I do.
I'll ask them. Do you have a question?
Yes, sorry. I think I do have just one, and Holly's question made me think of it earlier, just to make sure that I understand this right. If a student on her own wants to attend a fully online, full-time, virtual, remote academy, and she lives in X district, she can do that and enroll in that academy, but then she becomes an accountable student to the place where the academy resides. So if the district, Holly, didn't know she was doing that, she becomes accountable not to Murray, but to Callaway County or wherever it is that or to Jefferson County or wherever. It could be statewide since it's virtual. So the enrollment actually happens at that point. And so I think that still begs the question for me about part-time. This reg doesn't touch part-time.
No. Other than...
Right? Between the school district and the provider?
Yeah.
They would probably have to have an agreement to do part-time services.
We do have quite a bit of collaborative work between districts who, students are picking up a dual credit course, potentially that's offered in a location that's not offered by a home district. And so there are some agreements that folks are working through. But part-time generally has stayed pretty stable as well, as more students are picking up and trying to capture a course here or there.
I think, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, when we start talking about part-time, I think it depends on what the student is taking. So if they're taking a math course that's in 8th grade, then wherever they're taking the course is where that's where the accountability would lie. Am I correct in that, for the most part? If you're looking at part-time students.
Yeah, just to clarify, I think when
Sure.
I consider I mean taking a course, a supplemental course pickup, if you will. Probably a better way to say it is supplemental.
Okay.
They're enrolled full-time somewhere, and they may enroll in a supplemental course in some place.
Or dual credit of that nature. And then the other comment that I would make is a lot of times when you think about those type of questions I think this kind of closes the gap so that, you know, we had several students, a lot of students that their accountability just went to the state as opposed to a district.
Correct.
So this closes that to say, okay, you're not a test score straight to the state, you're also accountable to whoever's providing the services or where you're enrolled, if you will. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the proposed amendments to 704 KAR 3:535, please.
I make a motion?
Yeah.
I make the motion.
All right. Holly has made the motion. Do we have a second? Lee, second. Further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion has carried. Thank you. This one took us far afield and came back, and you keeping us our feet to the fire. So we're a little early, kind of.
20 minutes.
From committees to lunch, so just, yes.
So at this time, we are going to dismiss our committees. We had a lineup for committee assignments that I will ask you to honor at this meeting, and we will reconsider for October. The logistics for that, Meredith?
State schools will stay in here, and the United We Learn Committee.
That would be Steve, Diane, myself, Paul, and Lawrence. And then the United We Learn Committee, Holly, Lee, Julie, well, Julie's not here, Mike, Justin, Preston, and Secretary Lee. Thanks. I'd like to ask the board to come to order, and we can resume our action agenda. The first item, Flipper, you ready? I'd like to call on the chair of our United We Learn Committee, Holly Bloodworth, to provide an update on the committee's meeting.
Yes, we had a great meeting of the United We Learn Committee, and we had Mickey Ray, the Chief Academic Officer of Teaching and Learning, along with Jennifer Fraley. She is the new Director of Mathematics Education in the Office of Teaching and Learning, presented on the Numeracy Counts Act. So we have been hearing a lot about the literacy work that's going on here in the state and all of the amazing letters training and coaching models and all of those things coming out of that work. And so now we're moving into math. So we're beginning to see what that might look like. It's pretty exciting to hear about the plans that are happening and going on. You know, there was the House Bill 162 that kind of does a similar thing for math as was happening for literacy. So this will give students an opportunity to have teachers that are better prepared in math, will give them, make sure that they're getting diagnostic screeners and those kinds of things. Also, it puts in that multi-tiered system of support. So we heard a lot about some of the the possible systems that they're putting in place and the different partners that they're getting on board for various things. And they talked about how they are ahead of the game. I think they learned a lot from the literacy work, and now they're hitting the ground running with the math work. And I loved hearing they're ahead of schedule. So we had lots of good questions and lots of good comments. I appreciate the committee and their attentiveness and eagerness to hear about the work, and we look forward to hearing more about how this continues to roll out.
Well, I'm sure the whole board will look forward to learning more and being, working with the committee to get those reports to the board in a timely way. This is exciting, an exciting time. It does let us know, though, that when you focus the resources, when you get the resources, you can focus on the interventions that we know will work. We can address a lot of intractable issues. The literacy work is just producing amazing results, and frankly, we're looking forward to similar outcomes on the numeracy work. So, and it's really getting the right kind of support to our teachers across the state who want to get it done in the first place. So, thank you for that. That's really encouraging. Yes, Commissioner.
This is another example of the great work that's going on in the Office of Teaching and Learning. Thank you so much for that. Deputy Commissioner Woods Tucker, and also Mickey Ray, Chief Academic Officer, Mickey Ray Marinelli. Thank you, Mrs. Marinelli. But also, too, this was a great opportunity to bring another person into the department that has great expertise, great experiences, and I'm talking about Dr. Jennifer Fraley. She has worked with several districts throughout Eastern Kentucky in particular, but also with Carter County, and the expertise that she has through Kentucky Valley Education Cooperative. It's just another great opportunity to bring that expertise into the department so we can learn, then also share what we know with her, and maybe eventually get that back out as we go through. But it's great to hear we're ahead of schedule. So again, welcome to Dr. Jennifer Fraley also too.
For our next report, I'll call on Vice Chair Young and thank her for chairing the State Schools Committee, and we will have to deliberate on some action.
Yes. Thank you. Also a good committee meeting and a chance to hear from representatives for the Kentucky School for the Deaf, Kentucky School for the Blind, and our area technology centers. First up were Beth Engel, Director of State Schools, along with Associate Commissioner Dr. Beth Hargis, to give us updates on some Kentucky Tech policy updates that were required in order to align with some statutory and regulatory changes that they were looking at. I will get to those in just a moment. They also shared with us that we have 4 new ATC principals this year, some program changes across several of our schools this year, and that all of our ATCs will actually be in session come August 26. A few have already, 23 I believe, have already started to date. They are facing some vacancies to be filled, 15 right now, but 5 of those are in the final stages of being approved, so hopefully down to 10 at this point. And then some good conversation about the way that we, in response to Ms. Wood's question about the way we attempt to attract and retain teachers in our area technology centers. We also heard from Melody Cooper with the policy advisor in Greta Hilton's office about the Kentucky School for the Blind, some updates there around their new, every year Kentucky School Boards Association promulgates policies, model policies and procedures for school districts, and so we'll be looking at those from the School for the Deaf and the School for the Blind as well, and some updates from them. There's some dates in your portal about some the School for the Blind and the School for the Deaf coming up. And interesting to hear about the rollout of a new assistive technology device called a Monarch device. I'm going to see if I can swing by on the 23rd to see what that's all about in Louisville. So good information today as we start the new school year, and happy new school year to all of our students at KSB, KSD, and at our area technology centers. The business at hand today was to hear from the recommendations of these program directors, and I will lump the 2 of them in a single motion, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair, and the board. And we would be entertaining a motion to approve the, I am going to bring you a motion on behalf of the State Schools Committee to approve the proposed revisions to the Kentucky Tech Policies and Procedures and the annual policy adoptions and amendments for the Kentucky School for the Blind and the Kentucky School for the Deaf in that one motion.
This is on behalf of the committee, so we don't need a second. Are there questions, comments, issues, debate? I will call the question. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That action is done. Thank you. Thank you, Lou. The next item of business concerns our Kentucky Education Technology System and the operational plan for 24-25. So if we would have Associate Commissioner Couch, Division Director Mike Leadingham, and KBE Chief Digital Officer Marty Park come to the table.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time today. There are 3 items that this may want to talk to you about. First one is your primary mission is to, with this is to approve the $15.4 million in CATS funds to go toward the technology need. That's number one. Number 2, we always like to use this opportunity to educate the board at least once a year, the education technology health across our state. And we provide infographics to do that, which were included in your notes, along with our timeline, which because if we were a music band, it's our greatest hits album since 1992 that I've been fortunate enough to be part of since 1992. And then a discussion is the importance of making our additional budget request a board priority in the future. We put it in 2019 before COVID happened. And obviously there was increased emphasis on technology since the COVID, but we still have that basic need, and I've kind of discussed why, and the sense of urgency, especially as the federal funds start winding down. So I'll circle back to the first part, is we identify all the different funding sources that are available to go toward education technology, because in presenting to this board annually every year since 1992, they weren't just interested in the KETS funds, the Kentucky Education Technology funds, they were interested in all the funds that go toward education technology. So within your board packet, you saw just not the 15.4, but you saw the other 427 million, which you're not required to approve, but we want you to make aware of all the different funding sources. And I can tell you in the United States, Kentucky probably has, and I would say does have, the best handle on all the funding sources going toward technology. There's a lot of reasons because our standardization, our financial management system, a lot of the things that we do to gather that. But I'll give you a pretty good feel for the amount of funds that we have available going forward. And one of the key parts too on our infographic is it's just not the bits and bytes of stuff. If you took a look at that, it's the difference it's making from a student perspective, from a teacher perspective, and from school leaders' perspectives. And so you have a lot of statistics that are there within that document that I hope you take a look at. If you have any questions about that, we can address those. But I would tell you the education technology health of Kentucky K-12 is very good. And as we stated here, we are the pioneer or national leader in nearly every aspect of education technology, but we're always looking to get better and trying to improve. And I think that's what's made us relevant and a national leader for over 30 years is because of that mindset of what we've done. And I appreciate the Commissioner identifying one of our recent achievements. That was a big deal. It's been fun for me to be part of all 3 of those announcements that we've had through the years. And I look at it as being the son of a longtime and beloved teacher of my mom, is just watching the good run and go in life that she gave to students and just seeing that look in their eyes of when they see her. And of course, Mr. Trimble knows that, has seen that in Johnson County and knows that too. And I'm mainly known as Mrs. Couch's son versus David in Johnson County, which has always been good for me. I've enjoyed it. But we always want to make sure folks understand the difference that this is making in folks' lives and giving them a good run and go and really preparing them for the next phases of their life. And so that's what that infographic's about. Along with the timeline, the reason we spend time with that as people come and go through the years, they always say, can you get this in place? And for the most part, we've already got it in place. And they just don't recognize that we have those types of things in place. So it's a good kind of tool to have to educate folks that we have as they change over the course of time. Let me talk a little bit about our additional budget request, and which is super important to us. Is that this board has always been very supportive of education technology, which I've greatly appreciated over time. And previously, you made it a top 6 priority to help us address our education technology needs going forward. A big part of that is, and when we had budget issues in our state and across our nation, our budget was cut by $10 million a year. That has never been restored. During that same amount of time, there are basic services that cost of living, they increase, no matter what you have. For example, our financial management system, we have one of the best costs for that in the nation with Munis through Tyler, but it has an incremental cost increase through the course of time, as do most services. But we've never gotten, since 1992, an increase in our budget to address cost of living. And so part of this is to help us address the budget cuts that we've had, but also to prepare us for the future. So it's raising it from $15.4 million a year to $30 million a year. It was one time $25 million a year, and it's been cut down to $15.4. Now, the COVID money was wonderful across our state, and one of the sheets I have here kind of shows what the funding was before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and now we're starting to slide down, back down to where we were before the pandemic, which was we were underfunded at least $100 million a year, what we're trying to do. During the pandemic, obviously, we got tremendous funding, the most funding in my 32 years in leading the effort. But now we're starting to slide downward, and as that COVID money runs out, we want to sustain and make this a good experience in our school systems. And so part of the reason I asked this to be moved from consent to a discussion is just to make sure that's on your radar screen going forward about funding opportunities to try to make that. This is one of those behind-the-scene things that people don't notice until it's not working. It's kind of like an offensive lineman. You don't know who they are until they get a penalty and then their name is called. We're kind of do that for K-12 and make really magical things happen in the classroom, beyond the classroom for students. So I'll just pause there and just want to make sure the basic thing, and I'm sure Todd Meredith will remind you, is you just got to prove the $15.4 million, and that's an annual thing. But I just want to use this as a chance to educate you, and also if you have any kind of questions you want to ask of me.
This is an asset that we brag about all the time, and we have mightily benefited from David's vision of what's possible and just how to bring the technology to the service of education, not just in celebration of itself and having the gadgets, but at a time when the funds are it's going to get very competitive, David, because we're all at the cliff in every function. So thank you for the ask, and thank you for bringing this update. We will need to entertain a motion to approve these resources, so.
Can there be one more comment before we begin?
Yes,
okay,
yes.
Personally, having worked in a large district and then going to a small district, the technology was invaluable to leveling the playing floor, for lack of a better term, for all kids. And I looked at the number of people that support this. You and your staff are to be congratulated for being as transparent as you are with the dollars and showing where the money is going. That's much appreciated.
Comments, yes, Mike.
Dr. Couch, a couple things. I know you mentioned the $15 million to sustain what we have. With all of the cyber attacks and the AI ramping up, is there a I know that you wanted to go to 30, but or 25, is there a number that can help just to address those things? Because I think those are things that if we don't address on the front end could be very detrimental on the back end, and it'll be too late to catch up.
This is really being very frugal, an increase from $15.4 million a year to $30 million a year. Because you're right, is one of the documents shows in our infographic, our number of cyber attacks has raised up from 4 billion attempted annually on K-12 to now 137 billion attempted attacks on us. And so we have to always be mindful of that. Artificial intelligence is definitely something, and we were one of the first states to write a guide that we gave in words of wisdom to school districts on that. And we're also implementing something over the next 2 years with identity management to make it much easier for folks to log in and also to provide some cybersecurity for those that want to cause us harm. But part of this is trying to, we've reached the point, as I said, this was pre-COVID that we put this additional budget request in. We are now at a point, a crucial point of trying to address that. And once again, it's not, the amount of money that we had before was 25, it dropped down, we're trying to bring it back, and just a little bit more to help us out with cost of living and these new major initiatives that we have.
Steve?
Yes, I make the motion. I would like to say that that's always been a really good program there. His staff, David's always done a great job, and you know, I think sometimes we take it for granted how lucky we are to have the technology that we have in our schools, and we were blessed that when we had to go virtual during COVID that we were ready, and so I just want to commend him on the job that he and his staff does here at KDE, and I do make that motion.
Thank you, Steve. Okay.
Chair Robinson, we do need to clarify the motion if we could. So if you don't mind to read the description, just because it's not an approval of the full plan, just that portion of the budget that
the budget,
Associate Commissioner and Couch.
Okay, this motion regards approval of the 24-25 KETS operational management resources of $15.4 million in accordance with KRS 157.665 parentheses 3 to help address the Kentucky K-12 education technology operational management needs. And that is the motion on the table. Yes, please.
Okay, sorry, forgive me, but just to kind of run of this motion, is this to increase the funding from 15.4 to 30? This is only the operational plan, and you're just laying the groundwork for what will be a future. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
As to follow. And we will have a priorities discussion, and yes.
Question.
Are there other comments and questions? We have a motion offered by Steve, seconded by Diane, to approve this request. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, David, we can't say no. Thank you. For the next item, we will hear from General Counsel Todd Allen to present an amendment to 702 KAR 1:116, Annual In-Service Training of District Board Members.
Thank you, Chair Robinson.
Yes.
We have a regulatory amendment before the board today to amend, as you indicated, 702 KAR 1:116, and that relates to the training of local school district board members. During the legislative session, the General Assembly passed House Bill 499 that amended the training requirements for local Board of Education members. So that requires us to amend our regulation. If you all are following along in the regulation as we have it marked up in front of you on page 1, you will see there in section 1 that we refer to the statute, KRS 160.180. The drafting rules for administrative regulations in KRS 13A tell us that we shouldn't just repeat information that's already in statute. If it exists in statute, we should just refer to the statute number. So if you flip over to page 2 as well, you'll see that what we're doing is taking out all of those specific requirements for school board members based on their years of service, because all of that information is in statute. So that's where they'll go to see that. We refer to the fact that they should complete the requirements that are in that statute, and the statute requires them to complete training in certain areas at regular basis, and then for the remaining hours that they're required to get, they will utilize the training from topics that we set forth in administrative regulation. That starts over on page 3 at the bottom, line 20. We tell KSBA they're going to continue to be our approved trainer for local school board members, and they are to offer training on all of those topics that start on page 3, line 20. There are 14 of them, at least once every 2 years, except for numbers 1 through 4, which they should do every year. And that's because those are required with some regular frequency in the statute itself. So we want to be sure that local board members have the opportunity to get that done more frequently. I will pause there and see if you all have any questions about this amendment. Happy to answer any questions you may have. That the Kentucky School Boards Association has reviewed this and given their approval, as well as LSAC.
Any other questions? This is important training, important support for our local communities, every community. I'll ask a motion then to approve the amendment to 702 KAR 1:116, annual in-service training for district board members. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve those changes.
Second. Lou? Further questions for Todd? Comments? I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion to approve these amendments to the in-service training of district board members, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Todd. Associate Commissioner Beth Hargis and KBE Policy Advisor Regan Satellite. Thank you. So we are going to discuss amendment to regulations regarding attendance, compensatory time, and leave for certified and equivalent service.
You and good afternoon. We are in the process of cleanup, and so, we've been going through this, but the good news is we're almost finished with these, and, we will get to a point where we're finished with all of the technical amendments. So I will let Reagan walk you through both of these, and we'll take any questions you have.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Chair Robinson, we would actually like to kind of talk about both of these regulations together. If appropriate. 780 KAR 3072 and 780 KAR 3030, as Dr. Hargis mentioned, is a part of a cleanup initiative of the entire Title 780. In April, we brought...
3080?
Yes, I'm sorry, 3080. In April, we brought 8 regulations from Title 780, and we are bringing these 2 today, and there are more to follow. This is a cleanup initiative because this is an outdated title that predated the Office of Career and Technical Education being a part of the Kentucky Department of Education. These were established when our office was part of the Workforce Development Cabinet. And so we are modernizing these regulations. Everything is inconsequential to the way we have policies and procedures in our current operations of our area technology centers. They apply to teaching staff as well as administrative staff in the area technology centers. We have consulted with our Office of Finance and Operations, specifically the Division of Human Resources, as well as our Office of Legal Services. We don't intend to go through any specific changes individually, but we are prepared to answer any questions that you may have.
So are there questions? I mean, this has been an ongoing effort to get these regulations really aligned to support the program as it is now administered and given intervening legislative actions and so forth. So are we near the end?
We're certainly closer.
These folks have been so diligent in this effort that it's just been quite remarkable. So I will ask, do we have a motion that we can debate regarding the amendments to 780 KAR 3:072 and 780 KAR 3:080? I'd like a motion, please. Thank you. Steve, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right. I think you've done a good job. I'm going to venture, shall I call the question? All right. All those in favor of these amended regulations, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Thank you so much. You guys took on a Herculean task. And now we would like to ask Associate Commissioner Matt Ross and KDE Division Director Shay Ritter and KDE Facilities Branch Director John Gilbert to join us at the table to discuss an amendment to 702 KAR 4:090.
I'm Matt Ross, the Associate Commissioner in the Office of Finance and Operations.
Shay Ritter, Division of District Support.
John Gilbert, Facilities Branch.
So we have which one? The amendment?
Yeah, disposal.
Yeah, that's right. So we're asking for the approval of an amendment of our property disposal reg. And I'll let John and Che sort of go over the details, but when you think about property disposal, sort of the thing to keep at the heart of it is that when a district wants to surplus its property, that property must be surplus to the needs. The district must then receive fair market value for it in most cases. And so this regulation sort of sets forth how that's all achieved, right? So and what that means. The changes to the reg are not really as substantive. It's a lot of cleanup and laying out a very clear process, a linear process. It's part of our overall effort to update our facility regulations, and I know we've come before you a lot over the last, it seems like years. So we are slowly moving these to completion and working them through the actual administrative regulation promulgation process. But I'll let Che and John sort of explain to you how we're going to make it better and easier for districts and clearer for districts.
Yeah, I think one of the important things to note, we took this in front of LSAC several weeks ago, it seems like, and they were very supportive of this. And one of the concepts that we're trying to incorporate in all of our facility regulation changes, and this will make some of you sad, as we're trying to push the waivers back to KDE instead of KBE. I can hear the disappointment in the air that my easement waivers may not come to you, but we want to make it not only easier on districts, but think through, we're trying to serve the best we can. You heard Boyd earlier talk about great customer service. Facilities is there to support that side of the districts, and part of that is to being able to make and react, make decisions quickly, effectively, and efficiently, so these districts can move. A lot of times with property, it's very, timing is very important. So this was, I think, a big step in that direction. And frankly, these regulations, they sat idle for many, many, many years, and, the markets have changed. And we're probably a little smarter than we were about, districts now. When they dispose of property, they want a quick and fast process to get rid of it. And I think John's got some highlights, but again, the waiver process, I think, is one of the biggest changes that's hopefully, I think, a big positive for this process.
Sure, and of course, if the KDE were to not approve a waiver, then there would be an option for that district to bring it before you all. But like Chase said, if they file a waiver, if they ask for a waiver from us, then it can be a couple months before we can get in front of you. So this waiver process where KBE can do
KDE can do most of it, will really speed up some of the process.
Sure, thanks. Again, John Gilbert, Facilities Branch. Just to kind of hit some of the highlights, these two have pretty much summed it up. Some of the things that have happened in recent memory, of course, COVID, with some of the federal regulations and ESSER funds, a lot of property has occurred. And so part of this regulation, if districts have to get rid of property and they've used federal funds, we're giving some relationary numbers in there as the relates to, because there are some obligations that they have to. That helps streamline that process in terms of relationship of what they have to look at to what they have to do for that in order to close that process out, not only at the state level, but at the federal level. Also, disposal, we are incorporating this into the BG process, the Building and Grounds Forms process, which we have for construction and also acquisition. And that's part of the streamlining process. Currently, if you do a construction project, the first thing you do is a BG1. If you do property in terms of purchasing it, it's one of the last things. And in disposal, it's not part of that process at all. So as we come before you, not just today, but in future meetings, all of these are going to be streamlined, where the very first thing that they do for all the things as they go through facilities is doing that BG1 and reporting that information to us that's consistent with the HB 678 requirements that, as extended through 727, and having a consistency there. So that if I'm a facility director from one school district or not from any school district, I can essentially know that if I'm doing property or construction or design, I'm starting that process in similar fashion. And then one other thing that also recently happened in the last legislative session, I believe it was KRS 160, now 8, which really came into law this past July, was districts are able to dispose or acquire property with other governmental agencies without KD approval. While they do have to do that, we provide regulatory language so that they can report that, because they are required to report when they acquire property and when they get rid of property. So as part of that, we're just giving them some basic instructions. We're not doing approval process. It's just the basic fundamental reporting requirements that wouldn't have been in there, because that's just a recent law that has come into effect. And of course, like Matt and Shay mentioned, the waiver process and appeal process. The waiver process would come through KDE, and then if it needs to, would then be an appeal that comes to you all. The other, and I guess last item to kind of discuss, is HB 678 had a 30-day turnaround. In order to be accountable or more accountable, we've incorporated that into the regulation as well, to have a 30-day turnaround on completed submissions through that process. And that's all I have.
You take any questions?
So summarize the whole point of this, to make the process more efficient and more responsive to school district needs, but not compromise any opportunities for transparency and accountability.
One component is that the asking to have your BG1, your document which opens the process, and then a BG5 to close the process, will allow us to improve our facility inventory that the department maintains, so that we know better where they are, where a district is on a certain property-related matter, whether that is I'm getting rid of this piece of property, I'm buying a new piece of property, or I'm constructing something. It's just a way that we will have a better inventory, a better idea. We are constantly asked by the legislature, about inventory, about, and it just makes it a better record keeping from the state's point of view.
I will ask for a motion to approve this proposed amendment.
I used to be on the committee that used to listen to these things, and we held up a lot of people that needed things done just because they had to wait till we say, okay.
Okay, Justin, thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Justin, please, go ahead.
I am 100% in favor of anything to expedite these processes, and I agree, the closing the loop on this will help everyone. But I just wanted to make sure and ask the question, is there any additional legal risk assumed by eliminating at least that layer? I know there's still our option for an appeal. I like that. Just want to make sure there was no additional legal risk assumed because of this.
There's any additional legal risks assumed there, no. I can ask Todd.
Do you require appraisals before and at the end? And yes.
That I learned the hard way about school districts buying property or selling property. There's a constitutional requirement that they get a market value. And, you know, pre-COVID, that was a pretty boring topic. Appraisals were, you know, reasonable. Now, when I think they go get appraisal, they may get some sticker shock. But as we've gone along, and this has been a long-standing policy at KDE, I think 2 associates ago brought this up, and as well as the Office of Legal Services way back. That's a very integral part of this process because these are tax dollars. It's very important that the public get the value on both the buy and the sell. Districts are well aware of this, and we enforce that. You know, there's very few caveats to that.
Generally, the district is responsible for procuring their own appraisal rather than relying on a purchaser's appraisal. Yeah.
And you'll see, I think a couple of meetings ago, we allowed a district to use the transportation cabinet's appraisal for a slight, I don't know if it was an easement or a roadway adequacy thing.
But generally, small purchase will let them rely on another government agent's appraisal if it looks like requiring them to do their own would cost them more than the value of what they're getting, right? So,
is there any, I mean, an appraisal is just my opinion, and we can have different opinions. Is there like a 10% variance or anything? Are they allowed any latitude when they do that?
They are actually. The minimus is about 5%.
5%,
give or
okay.
take, yeah.
Okay.
To address Dr. Pate's question about the legal risk, you know, I think as the team has explained, the real reason that we have any process in place is because we're talking about land, property that is acquired with taxpayer dollars that is meant for educational purposes. So then when we talk about selling that, we need to ensure that, number one, fair market value is being obtained for it to replenish the pot, essentially, for use for educational services. The authority is within the board to either decide the measures that they want to look at or that they want to essentially delegate to the commissioner to approve with specific criteria. And that's what the folks are putting forth, what the specific criteria would be that allows the commissioner to provide that approval to happen. So I don't think that by delegating that authority with specific criteria, the board is taking on any additional legal risk. This is really the appropriate process to follow if we want to make the process more streamlined, more quick, instead of school districts having to wait for board meetings to occur every 2 months.
Dr. Fletcher,
I appreciate that clarity. Usually there's some kind of dollar amount, was one of the reasons I was asking about that, but I agree. I like, due to the nature of all this, where this is going.
So, Dr. Fletcher, you want to comment?
One of the things that, you know, you hear from districts a lot is, you know, one of our goals, first and foremost, is to be a service organization. And when you talk to districts, one of the things they would like for processes to be a little faster, a little quicker, and maybe a little more nimble is in facilities. And I think that this being brought forth helps us with that. You know, we can look at House Bill 678. There were some things that helped districts out as far as moving through with this process, but I think this is another thing that would be help us to be a better service organization to our districts, again, with an appropriate process.
Thank you. I think we are ready to act on the motion. We have it moved and seconded. All those in favor of approving the amendment to the 702 KAR 4-:090, please say aye. All those opposed, say no. All right, it carries. We are moving right along in this process. This isn't the first time this issue's come up. We've been making improvements incrementally, and now we're at a very key point. And Commissioner Fletcher, this is, I think there's more to come, perhaps, on this matter. The next item concerns Matt Ross and Shay Ritter as well, and Jefferson County this time. A waiver regarding Section 4, parentheses 4, parentheses B of 702 KAR 4:050. This is building site inspection approval.
A representative from Jefferson County with us. I'll try to kick us off, and then she'll be available for any questions. What I think we have here is Jefferson County was donated a piece of property, I think, and that property has some easements running through it. Some of those easements could be moved, yes, but some of them cannot be moved. We have a regulation that says that school property cannot have an easement running through it, mainly for being able to use the property, right, for its intended use. In this case, it's like I think a storm or sewage drain, a storm drain, just simply cannot be moved, but it will not impact actually the district's use of that property. It's a decent sized property. So our facilities branch is supportive, and our office is supportive of approving this waiver to allow the district to go ahead with being able to develop this property. Susan, would you like to comment more about your project?
I'm happy to answer any questions. We have done a sample layout and feel like we can fit a school and all the parking and bus drop-off needed on this 19-acre piece of property and maintain the easement that traverses through the middle of it. It is a storm easement that carries storm from one side of the property to the other and is existing.
And the commissioner has recommended that we approve this request, so I will ask a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Is there a second? Thank you, Jude. Any further comment or question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. It carries. Proceed apace in Jefferson County. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Our guests for the presentation of the Grissom Award are on the way, so we're going to take about a 10-minute break, and then we'll ask Commissioner Fletcher to please honor us by making this presentation and honor our award winners, right? Yes, ma'am. Okay. The board is now back in session, and we'll continue with the agenda with some more celebrating. Commissioner Fletcher, please.
Well, it's my honor to do the presentation of the 2024 Grissom Award for Innovation in Special Education. The late Dr. Johnny Grissom served at the KDE in the role of Associate Commissioner of the Office of Special Instructional Services. She provided steadfast commitment, service, and leadership, striving to help all students achieve at high levels, regardless of their disabilities. This award is given each year to a Kentuckian or a Kentucky organization to honor outstanding dedication to improving student achievement for students with disabilities. Criteria for the award include leadership or implementation of innovative practice in curriculum, instruction, or assessment that leads to improved learning, post-secondary, or workforce outcomes for students with learning or behavior differences, and district or schools demonstrating significant improvement or sustained excellence in learning or behavior outcomes for students with learning or behavior differences. At this time, it is my honor to call to the table and to announce the winners of the 2024 Grissom Award for the Innovation in Special Education, Tracy Francis, Jennifer Witt, and Lynn Petrie from the Purpose in Action Collaborative Project. If you could please come to the table up here for just a second. And before we ask you to speak, congratulations. It's an honor to be here with you, and congratulations on the award. Very well deserved. Now, I'd like to take a few minutes to share what their nominators said about the team's outstanding contributions in special education. The Purpose in Action Collaborative Project, funded by the Purpose in Action Grant, allowed for a collective effort between public education, the local community, and the private sector. All students, those with and without disabilities, work together to design and create an Americans with Disabilities Act compliant, or ADA compliant, workstation in partnership with the Berea Makerspace, located in Berea, Kentucky, and the Lexington plant of Parker Hannafin, a global Fortune 250 manufacturing company. By bridging the gap between education and real-world experiences, they have created opportunities for students to apply their knowledge in meaningful contexts and develop essential life skills. Their dedication to fostering a supportive and inclusive learning environment has led to sustained excellence in learning outcomes, setting a benchmark for educational practices in their district. In one interview, a student member of the team who uses a wheelchair said to the interviewer, "People think that we can't do things because we have disabilities, and that's not true. This is showing them we can do things." As we've talked so many times, our role in education is to provide opportunity. You have provided opportunities. Thank you so much for that. Everything about this project was important: the creativity, the engineering, the designing. However, we are most pleased with the lifelong emotional impact, increased empathy, self-advocacy, and self-confidence we now see in our students. It's priceless. Now, we'll have an opportunity for remarks from our award winners. Please introduce yourself a little bit, tell us a little bit about yourself, and give us a few remarks about your program, about the award itself, whatever comes to mind, please.
I'm Tracy Francis. I am the Director of Special Education in Woodford County. I'm also the coordinator for student services under 504. So when Dr. Petrie presented this to us, and I had worked with him previously, so I knew his work ethic, and when he presented the opportunity, it was an opportunity to dream for our students and to provide something that had never been done, and work with all of our students. And the opportunity, as it's, the last part of that, what you just read, that statement about how our students felt, the compassion, empathy, but the self-reflective part from our students, and then the, what's the word? They were just so overwhelmed with, they were seen, our students were seen with disabilities. That was it. That's what they kept saying. You see us. And that's their words, not my words. It was amazing. So we had several students in wheelchairs, but one of those students never held their head up. In elementary, she just didn't do that. And she'll tell you this. She graduated last year, and every time you saw her, she had her head held high, and she had self-respect and ownership of the school, and it was her home. And so it was just amazing to see those pieces. But again, it was an opportunity from the top down. So Dr. Petrie, Mr. Atkins, our superintendent, he allowed us to do what we wanted to do and let us dream. So that's where we landed with it with our kids in Woodford County. Very, very pleased with their outcomes.
I'm Jennifer Witt. I'm the Director of Exceptional Children's Services for Berea Independent School District. That title means that I help coordinate those programs for students with disabilities, both special education and 504. And then I also coordinate the programming for students with language learning needs.
For us, it was very much the same thing. It was an opportunity to provide something in our district to our students with and without disabilities that we hadn't really ever had before. We do a lot of work in academics. We do a lot of work in post-secondary transition and getting students work ready and ready to go out into the communities. But having an opportunity to make that real, genuine, and authentic, letting kids get their hands dirty, actually make and learn not just the soft skills we want them to learn, but also some skills they can walk away with that are hard skills that make them, accessible to an employer. So there were so many people involved in this project. Ms. Francis and I could not have done this alone. So many teachers, so many parents who took the opportunity to help. And again, without Mr. Petrie and Mr. Cook's leadership, vision, and guidance, we wouldn't have made it through. But I think it really did, we talk about those experiential opportunities for students. This is something that got their hands dirty. It got them in the real world. It allowed them to take the math from the classroom walls and actually apply it to something they could create. And just having the opportunity, every student was able to participate how they wanted. So they all had a successful experience, which was also something that was very, very important to us. And so just like Ms. Francis mentioned, we had a student who never spoke out in class, never took the opportunity. So the teachers actually never called on her either because she got so anxious she couldn't spend the rest of the day with us. This student at the competition stood in front of crowds of unknown people and spoke. Not only did she speak, she spoke loudly and with fluency and had the ability to share her component of the project. So I don't know that we could, even in an hour, explain to you the great impact that this type of project had on our students. But we would very much be open to more experiences like this.
I'll let the two best ones go ahead and speak first. Being part of this project through the Office of Special Education Early Learning under Greta Hilton's leadership in that area, she started the transition team. I was fortunate enough to be in that team, and she said just inspire school districts to create transition opportunities for students with disabilities. And I was like, I'm allowed to do anything or think outside the box, correct? She hesitantly said, yeah, go ahead. And so I approached this in a different way. I wanted to connect the school. I wanted to connect an organization that would benefit from helping in the school system. I wanted to connect a business to really give those students what we mean by transition readiness, what's going to happen after high school. So I wanted to give them a realistic real-world experience. I wanted to give the business a real-world experience and get a different perspective on how that they were looking at business and some of the vocabulary that they were using, and really tie that in to connect the school. Well, this is what they mean. And I think that perspective and seeing how bright our young people are in the school system in order to meet those real-world challenges of simple, just recreating something that they see every day as far as a workstation. Well, what are some of the ways that we can make that really inclusive and really bring in the most people in our community besides just basing it on, the standards that that business has set? How can we think more innovative?
Would you let the board know what your current role is?
Oh, I am the principal at Kentucky School for the Deaf, and we have a focus this year of career and technical education. I really want to connect our community there in Danville and really bring awareness to deaf education and just the deaf culture and how that ties in with being post-secondary ready and just bringing about different kinds of awareness.
Well, before we go on with this award, I want to say I've had the opportunity to visit the campus there in Danville, and very impressed, Dr. Petrie, with your vision. Very happy to have you represent our students think we've also had a great hire to help you in the assistant principal's role. And give us her name one more time.
Strassner.
She's from South Carolina, I believe, correct?
Yes, yes.
But again,
we won't hold that against
we
her.
won't hold that against her. We allow Gamecocks so we can reform them. We allow them here so we can reform them. But again, so happy to have you a part of our team and to hear your vision for our school, but also part of the vision for this too. Thank you so much. Is Miss Elaine Bailey in the room? She was a nominator. Miss Bailey, do you have anything you'd like to say as nominator? Come over and sit by your people here, please. Please.
The biggest thing I would say was kind of what Ms. Francis said, was getting to see not only how it impacted our students who do use wheelchairs or may have disabilities, but our students who don't in the same class. And we had several students say, I can't go, and Mr. Atkins, Superintendent Atkins, I know loves this quote too, I can't go anywhere now. I can't go to Kroger or Walmart or the movie theater without thinking, how would one of my friends, one of my classmates who happens to use a wheelchair be able to access this place? And I think that's gonna live with them forever, their entire lives. They'll always be mindful of other people with just other stories. And I think that was my favorite part, to be able to talk to our students about and to see that come to life.
Thank you for recognizing that, and also for taking the time to nominate this work. We appreciate it so much. But there's one other person I'd like to give an opportunity to talk a little bit. Superintendent Atkins. Superintendent Atkins, you're back there and you're about to come out of your jacket. I see the tie is kind of swelled up out there. Anything you'd like to say, sir?
Just that I'm so proud of this project and was very excited when Mr. Petrie reached out to us to be a part, and we knew immediately that we had to embrace this. Mm-hmm. And from that day on, it was one of our focal points there. We had one of our ag teachers grab it and run with it, and just, you would not believe some of the things these kids did together to make this happen.
They out-engineered the engineers.
They did. They got so many compliments from engineering staff from EKU, UK, several different locations. So it was amazing to see both teams involved and both teams so embedded in what they were doing. It was awesome. It really was.
Before we give a round of applause, I would like to give board members an opportunity. Do you have any comments that you'd like to make about the project, about the award winner?
I have a question. Parker Hannafin was mentioned in the nomination. What role did Parker Hannafin play?
Parker allowed the students to come give basically a tour of the factory and really narrow in on what sector that they wanted to look at to make more inclusive, and basically gave them a team of engineers that the students could bounce ideas off of and kind of give their layout of what they wanted to propose. Parker Hannafin gave the okay to move ahead with that. And also Parker is, I think, providing workstations back to the school district of the design of a combination of both schools and what they come up with.
They also went as far as to change their facilities to accommodate ADA compliance, because what ADA compliance says is compliant truly is not, because wheelchairs are not, I roll them by my hands anymore. You have these 500-pound, 1,000-pound wheelchairs that these students are in, depending on their limitations of mobility, and they couldn't even fit in the restrooms, the doorways and things. And so it was very eye-opening, and the engineers took the feedback from our students, and their plants across the world, actually, they're looking at the facilities for all of that. So it's a huge impact on Parker Hannafin. They were phenomenal to work with.
Which location? Was it the Lexington office?
Lexington.
Mm-hmm.
Great example. If you look at the mission of the board, we talk about trying to grow those collaboration with communities. And when you have such collaboration, such a wonderful project that you collaborate with people that live inside, that want to work with your students, it just opens up so much more for our kids. It's a beautiful thing when we can sit down and we have those type of group efforts with the people around us and give them time to invest in our kids. but also too the return to our kids after that. So collaborating communities is what's going to take us to that next level to give those vibrant learning opportunities to our kids. I really believe that. Others?
First of all, I would like to congratulate the award winners and thank you all for your service, greatly increasing everything in special education. We thank you all. Now, I know I may be a little biased here, but throughout the course of this meeting, I've had all kinds of people come up to me, talk about all good things about Woodford County. Really brings a sense of pride to me as a Woodford County student. So, Danny Atkins, Mr. Atkins, I apologize. I'm currently skipping the first day of school, but that's an excused right. That's an excused absence, but
Opportunity, I think, is what we're talking about here, correct? Education, yeah, educational enhancement opportunity.
But keep up the good work, sir.
And I would just like to add that had the privilege of knowing and working with Dr. Johnny Grissom, and this is exactly the kind of award the kind of project that this award embodies, and she would have been very, very proud of this work.
Well, I have to say, I'm sitting here just swelling with pride for your work and having this work stand as an example of the innovation, the creativity, the guts, the determination, the energy, and the just plain love of kids that gave them a chance to create community and understand their place in it and the kind of community that they intend to create as they are students and as they are citizens. So it's hard to just imagine this is a special education award. This is a special education award because you are so special in doing it. Thank you again. So let's give trophies.
Can I have one more comment?
Yes.
You know, I think this is such a great example of when all stakeholders come together and work collaboratively to move from the I can't to the I can.
Yeah.
So we hope this is very special. And I knew Johnny Grissom also, and I can see her smiling down and shaking her head. Well done.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I want to finish up with one thing. As we move beyond ARP and ESSER funding, I want to create a challenge for all school districts across the state of Kentucky to continue projects like this. I'm so happy to learn that Ms. Witt and Berea is continuing their own purpose and action project, but I really want to challenge each school district to pick up a project and run with it in this very sense.
Yeah, that's the last thing I'll say too. We could talk about this all day because we lived this. We ate, eat, sleep, and breathe something. But the project itself, the work is still going on in both the districts, and that is amazing because it wasn't a one-time thing. And so it built a culture that wasn't there before, that we were working towards, but we didn't know how to get there. So it allowed for that opportunity. So.
And the challenge is to get it in other districts too, so that students all across the state are having the same opportunity.
Correct.
Yes.
That's Superintendent Diane Hatchett, correct?
Yes.
And we also want to thank Diane for her contributions and her part. She was obviously not able to be here today with us, but again, Diane is a great superintendent, one of the most enthusiastic people I've ever met. So it's great to have her be recognized also as a part of this team. Okay, congratulations again. And on behalf of the Kentucky Board of Education and the staff of the Kentucky Department of Education, I want to personally thank you for your dedication to improving student achievement for students with disabilities. So if you would please come forward up here, and I think I'm going to break protocol here. If we could have all board members to come up to stand with them, and Superintendent Atkins, if you could please, and also if we could have Ms. Bailey, our nominator. Is there any way we could get everybody into this picture? We think we can do that up here? Come on, Joe, you can do it. Come on. All right.
Our engaging with these award winners. As soon as you give me a motion to adjourn and we pass it, we can return to our socializing with our award winners. Yes, Steve?
A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right.